Beneath the cherry blossoms of ancient Japan, behind the gleaming steel of legendary katana, and within the shadows of towering castle walls, there exists a world that has captivated the imagination of humanity for centuries. Yet what we think we know about the samurai, those legendary warriors who ruled Japan for nearly 700 years, may be nothing more than carefully constructed myths. The truth about their daily existence is far stranger, more complex, and infinitely more fascinating than any Hollywood film or romantic novel has ever dared to reveal. Picture, if you will, a spring morning in the year 1650. The sun has not yet risen over the sprawling city of Edo, home to more than 1 million souls. In a modest wooden residence within the samurai quarter, a figure stirs in the pre-dawn darkness. This is not the fearsome warrior of legend, clad in elaborate armor and thirsting for battle. Instead, we witness something far more mysterious. A man who will spend more time today with ink brush than sword, more hours in meditation than in combat, more energy preserving culture than taking lives. Who were these enigmatic figures really? How do they live when no enemy threatened their gates? What filled their days during the long centuries of peace that defined most of samurai history? The answers challenge everything we thought we knew about these legendary warriors. For more than 8 centuries, from the rise of the Minamoto clan in 1185 to the abolition of their class in 1871, samurai lived according to codes so intricate, rituals so precise, and philosophies so profound that they created an entirely separate reality within Japanese society. They were simultaneously warriors and poets, administrators and artists, brutal enforcers and gentle cultivators of beauty. They lived each day as if it were their last, yet spent decades mastering arts that had nothing to do with warfare. The very word samurai derives from the verb saburao, meaning to serve, yet these servants became masters. Originally hired muscle for wealthy landowners, they evolved into Japan's ruling class, controlling every aspect of government, culture, and daily life. But this transformation came with a price that few outside their ranks could comprehend. Total subjugation of personal desire to duty, complete acceptance of death as a daily possibility, and absolute devotion to perfection in every action, no matter how mundane. Consider the staggering complexity of their existence. A single samurai might begin his day with Zen meditation, spend his morning copying administrative documents in flawless calligraphy, practice sword techniques for precisely 1 hour, conduct a tea ceremony with the reverence of a religious ritual, compose poetry that would be remembered for centuries, and end his day reading Confucian philosophy by candlelight. Every gesture was prescribed, every word calculated, every breath taken in service to ideals that demanded nothing less than spiritual transformation. But here lies the greatest mystery of all. During the Edo period, which lasted from 1603 to 1868, Japan experienced unprecedented peace. For over 2.5 centuries, samurai lived without war. Imagine the psychological complexity of maintaining warrior identity while administrative duties replaced battlefield glory. How does a class defined by combat adapt when combat disappears? How do descendants of fierce horse archers transform into urban bureaucrats without losing their souls? The answer lies hidden in the incredible discipline of their daily routines. Modern archaeological evidence reveals samurai residences filled not with weapons, but with books, writing implements, musical instruments, and art supplies. Excavations of former castle towns uncovered not armories, but sophisticated educational institutions, libraries, and cultural centers. The legendary fighting men of Japan had become something unprecedented in world history. Warrior scholars whose daily lives revolved around the cultivation of both mind and spirit. Recent research by Japanese historians has uncovered thousands of personal diaries, household records, and administrative documents that paint a picture radically different from popular imagination. These primary sources reveal samurai obsessing over proper flower arrangement, spending fortunes on rare books, and devoting months to perfecting a single poem. They show warriors rising before dawn, not to sharpen swords, but to practice calligraphy. They document men whose greatest battles were fought against their own imperfections in pursuit of aesthetic and moral ideals. Yet beneath this refined surface lurked something far darker and more complex. Every samurai lived with the constant awareness that a single mistake, a moment's dishonor, or a superior's displeasure could demand the ultimate price: ritual suicide by seppuku. They cultivated beauty and practiced brutality with equal dedication. They wrote tender poetry and carried weapons capable of cutting a man in half with a single stroke. They spent years learning to arrange flowers and moments learning to kill with their bare hands. This paradox defined every aspect of their daily existence. A samurai's morning meditation prepared him for death that might come before evening. His afternoon tea ceremony celebrated the transient beauty of life while acknowledging its inevitable end. His evening poetry composition captured emotions he might never live to express again. Every ritual, every custom, every moment of their carefully structured days reflected this profound acceptance of mortality that shaped their entire worldview. The regional variations in samurai daily life add yet another layer to this mystery. A warrior serving in the cold mountains of northern Honshu lived according to dramatically different rhythms than his counterpart in the subtropical south. Economic differences between domains meant some samurai dined on elaborate multi-course meals, while others survived on rice and pickled vegetables. Political variations determined whether a samurai spent his days in luxurious leisure or desperate poverty, in positions of tremendous power or humiliating dependence. Even more intriguing are the seasonal variations that governed every aspect of samurai existence. Their daily routines changed as dramatically as the landscape itself, following natural cycles that connected these urban warriors to agricultural rhythms their ancestors had abandoned centuries earlier. Spring brought cultural festivals and military training. Summer demanded administrative intensity and spiritual purification. Autumn required harvest supervision and aesthetic contemplation. Winter enabled scholarly pursuits and artistic refinement. These seasonal transitions weren't merely practical adaptations, but profound spiritual transformations that reflected fundamental beliefs about humanity's relationship with nature, time, and mortality. Each season brought its own ceremonies, its own foods, its own clothing, its own artistic themes, its own philosophical focus. The samurai lived not in linear time, but in endless cycles that connected them to both their ancestors and their descendants. Perhaps most mysterious of all is how this incredibly complex lifestyle prepared samurai for the modern world. When Japan opened to the West in the 1850s and underwent rapid modernization during the Meiji Restoration, former samurai became government officials, educators, business leaders, and innovators who guided Japan's transformation into a modern nation. The discipline, literacy, administrative competence, and cultural sophistication that defined their daily lives provided exactly the skills needed for modernization. The hidden world behind the sword thus reveals itself as something far more profound than warrior culture. It was a comprehensive system for human development that balanced martial readiness with cultural refinement, individual perfection with social responsibility, acceptance of death with celebration of life. Understanding their daily existence offers insights not just into Japanese history, but into fundamental questions about how human beings can create meaningful lives within complex societies. As we embark on this journey through a typical samurai day, we must prepare to abandon our preconceptions and enter a world where every gesture carried meaning, every moment demanded perfection, and every breath taken was both an act of service and a step towards spiritual enlightenment. The truth about samurai daily life is stranger than fiction, more complex than legend, and more relevant to our modern world than we might ever imagine. Dawn's first light, the sacred morning rituals. The first mystery of samurai daily life begins before the sun itself dares to pierce the darkness. In that liminal hour when night surrenders to day, When spirits are said to walk between worlds, the samurai awakens not to the sound of battle horns or enemy approach, but to something far more profound, the silent call of his own mortality. It is the fourth hour past midnight, what the ancient Japanese called Yusamitsudoki, the hour of deep darkness. Throughout Edo, in castle towns across the archipelago, from the snow-covered domains of northern Mutsu to the subtropical settlements of southern Kyushu, thousands of warriors rise from their futon bedding as if summoned by an invisible force. This is not coincidence, nor is it mere discipline. This is ritual so sacred, so fundamental to samurai existence, that to neglect it would be to lose one's very identity as a member of the warrior class. But why this hour? Why do these legendary fighters choose to greet each day in darkness rather than dawn's natural light? The answer lies buried in centuries of spiritual tradition that transformed simple soldiers into something unprecedented in human history. Warriors whose greatest battles were fought not against external enemies, but against the chaos within their own souls. The awakening itself follows protocols as precise as any military maneuver. No jarring sounds disturb the household harmony. Instead, the samurai's internal rhythm, cultivated through years of practice, draws him from sleep at exactly the appointed moment. In the profound silence that precedes dawn, he sits motionless on his sleeping mat, allowing consciousness to emerge gradually, like lotus petals opening to receive the first light. This moment of transition from sleep to wakefulness holds mystical significance in samurai philosophy. Sleep represents the small death that visits every human being each night. Awakening symbolizes rebirth, resurrection, the daily opportunity to begin existence anew. But for the samurai, this awakening carries additional weight. It might be the last time he performs this ritual. Today could bring the honorable death he has prepared for his entire life, or the shameful mistake that demands ritual suicide by evening. The first physical action involves purification that connects the samurai to both Buddhist and Shinto traditions stretching back over a millennium. Rising silently to avoid disturbing family members, he moves to a designated area of his residence where purification implements await. Cold water, drawn fresh the previous evening and allowed to reach the temperature of dawn air, sits in a wooden basin alongside white cotton cloth and other ritual necessities. The purification ceremony itself would astonish modern observers with its complexity and spiritual intensity. Beginning with the ritual washing of hands, the samurai cleanses not merely physical impurities accumulated during sleep, but spiritual contamination gathered through worldly existence. Each gesture carries symbolic meaning passed down through generations of warriors who understood that external cleanliness reflected internal purity essential for spiritual development. The face washing follows prescribed patterns that address specific spiritual concerns. Water applied to the forehead clears mental obstacles that prevent proper meditation. Cleansing the eyes removes illusions that distort perception of reality. Washing the mouth purifies speech, ensuring that words spoken throughout the day will honor the warrior's commitment to truth and righteousness. Every drop of water, every movement of the cloth, every breath taken during the ceremony connects the samurai to cosmic forces that govern existence itself. But the most profound element of morning purification involves the psychological preparation for death that distinguishes samurai from all other warrior traditions. As cold water touches his skin in the pre-dawn darkness, the samurai contemplates the Buddhist teaching that this body, this life, this very moment exists only temporarily. By evening, all might be gone. This recognition doesn't create morbid obsession, but rather liberates him from attachments that prevent complete dedication to duty and honor. Following purification comes the spiritual centerpiece of every samurai morning. Meditation practices that combine Zen Buddhism, Confucian ethics, and indigenous Japanese spirituality in a comprehensive psychological preparation for the day ahead. Seating himself in formal seiza position, kneeling with precise posture that reflects internal discipline. The samurai enters contemplative states that transform his consciousness from individual concerns to universal awareness. Zen meditation, introduced to Japan by traveling monks in the 12th century, became the foundation of samurai spiritual practice because it addressed the unique psychological demands of warrior life. Unlike other Buddhist traditions that sought to eliminate desire and attachment, Zen teaching prepared warriors to act decisively in life-or-death situations while maintaining spiritual equilibrium. The morning zazen session, typically lasting 30 to 60 minutes, cultivated the mental clarity essential for both administrative duties and potential combat. The meditation posture itself carries profound significance. The straight spine represents the warrior's unwavering commitment to righteousness. Hands positioned in cosmic mudra symbolize the unity of individual will with universal principles. Eyes half closed, gazing downward at a 45-degree angle, maintain awareness of the physical world while accessing deeper spiritual dimensions. Breathing becomes a conscious practice that connects the samurai to life force itself, while preparing for the moment when breath might cease forever. Seasonal variations in morning meditation reflect the samurai's profound connection to natural cycles that govern all aspects of existence. Spring meditations focus on renewal, growth, and the awakening of life force after winter's dormancy. Summer practices emphasize endurance, purity, and the spiritual discipline required to maintain equilibrium during intense activity. Autumn meditation contemplates the beauty of transience, the necessity of letting go, and preparation for winter's challenges. Winter sessions dive deepest into introspection, studying sacred texts, and cultivating wisdom that sustains the spirit during dark months. The morning prayer sequence that follows meditation reveals the complex religious synthesis that defines samurai spirituality. Buddhist prayers seek merit for ancestors, protection for family members, and wisdom for making correct decisions throughout the day. Shinto observances honor the kami, spiritual forces that govern natural phenomena and clan prosperity. Confucian reflection examines ethical principles that guide social relationships and administrative responsibilities. Family Buddhist altars, present in every samurai residence, receive elaborate morning attention that connects individual warriors to generations of ancestors who faced similar challenges and embodied similar ideals. Fresh offerings of rice, tea, and incense honor departed family members while seeking their guidance for daily decisions. These aren't superstitious practices, but sophisticated psychological techniques that maintain cultural continuity and provide spiritual support for individuals facing constant pressure and potential death. The household Shinto shrine, typically positioned to face east toward the rising sun, receives prayers for protection, prosperity, and harmony between human activities and natural forces. These observances reflect the samurai understanding that individual success depends on maintaining proper relationships with spiritual powers that govern everything from weather patterns to political stability. Morning study of Confucian classics provides the ethical framework that guides all subsequent daily activities. The Analects of Confucius, the Mencius, and other foundational texts offer practical wisdom for governance, family relationships, and personal conduct. This isn't abstract philosophy, but practical guidance for specific situations that samurai encounter throughout their complex daily responsibilities. The conclusion of morning rituals involves mental preparation for the day ahead that demonstrates the sophisticated psychological techniques samurai developed for managing stress, uncertainty, and the constant possibility of violent death. Reviewing the previous day's actions, examining mistakes and successes, planning improvements for future behavior. These practices created continuous self-improvement cycles that produced the legendary self-discipline for which samurai became famous. Regional variations in morning practices reflect local conditions and domain preferences while maintaining essential spiritual elements. Northern domains adapted rituals for harsh winter conditions that limited outdoor activities. Southern regions incorporated extended purification practices suited to humid climates. Mountain domains emphasized communion with natural forces, while coastal areas included prayers for maritime safety and prosperity. As the first pale light of dawn finally penetrates the darkness, the samurai concludes his morning rituals with renewed spiritual strength and mental clarity that will sustain him through whatever challenges the day might bring. He has faced his own mortality, cleansed his spirit, honored his ancestors, and prepared his mind for service that might demand everything he possesses, including life itself. This sacred beginning sets the tone for everything that follows, establishing spiritual foundation that transforms mundane activities into opportunities for continued growth and service. The mystery of samurai morning rituals thus reveals itself as sophisticated spiritual technology that enabled ordinary human beings to live extraordinary lives dedicated to ideals higher than personal survival or comfort. The warrior's preparation, dressing for honor. As the sacred morning rituals draw to their close and the first golden rays of sunlight filter through paper screens, the samurai faces perhaps the most transformative moment of his entire day. What happens next is far more than simply putting on clothes. It is a metamorphosis as profound and mysterious as any spiritual ceremony, a daily resurrection that transforms a vulnerable human being into an embodiment of centuries-old ideals that transcend individual mortality. The chamber where this transformation occurs has been prepared with the same meticulous attention as a temple altar. Wooden clothing stands, polished to mirror-like perfection, hold garments arranged according to protocols so ancient their origins are lost in the mists of early Japanese history. Lacquered boxes contain accessories whose placement follows rules as rigid as any military formation. Every fold, every angle, every spatial relationship reflects a cosmic order that connects the individual samurai to forces far greater than himself. But here lies the first mystery that confounds modern understanding. Why does this process require such extraordinary complexity? Why do contemporary accounts describe samurai spending up to 2 hours each morning simply getting dressed? The answer challenges everything we think we know about practical military culture, revealing instead a civilization where clothing served as spiritual armor more important than any steel protection ever forged. The transformation begins with the most intimate layer, the fundamental kosode, literally small sleeves, a white silk undergarment that touches the skin and carries profound symbolic meaning. White represents purity, spiritual cleanliness, and the acceptance of death that defines samurai psychology. This garment, invisible to the outside world, reminds the warrior throughout the day that beneath all external appearances lies the essential spiritual reality, a mortal being dedicated to immortal principles. The donning of the kosode follows ritual patterns that connect the samurai to Shinto purification traditions dating back over a millennium. The right arm enters first, symbolizing the sun's daily journey across the heavens. The left arm follows, representing the moon's nocturnal path. The careful arrangement of the collar exposes exactly 2 fingers' width of neck. No more, no less. According to court protocols that originally governed imperial dress but became essential elements of samurai identity. Over this foundation comes the next mysterious layer, the hakama, those distinctive wide-legged trousers that transform the human silhouette into something approaching the supernatural. But the hakama's importance transcends mere appearance. Each of its 7 pleats carries specific meaning passed down through generations of warriors who understood that clothing must educate as well as protect. The 5 front pleats represent the 5 virtues of Confucian ethics: benevolence, righteousness, courtesy, wisdom, and faithfulness. The 2 rear pleats symbolize loyalty and devotion, the twin pillars upon which all samurai existence rests. The colors and patterns of hakama reveal a complex social language that modern observers struggle to decipher. Deep indigo, preferred by many samurai, represents the endless depths of ocean and sky while demonstrating practical wisdom. This color hides bloodstains and maintains dignity even in violent circumstances. Subtle stripe patterns indicate specific rank levels within domain hierarchies. Family mon, crests, woven into the fabric announce clan affiliations that carry obligations spanning generations. Seasonal clothing changes, known as koromogi, occur 4 times yearly according to imperial mandates that govern the entire samurai class. These transitions represent far more than practical adaptation to weather conditions. They embody the fundamental Japanese belief that human existence must harmonize with natural cycles, that spiritual development requires attunement to cosmic rhythms that govern all life on Earth. Spring's clothing transformation reflects renewal and rebirth themes that permeate samurai philosophy. Lighter fabrics and brighter colors symbolize the awakening of life force after winter's dormancy. Cherry blossom motifs woven into silk remind the wearer of beauty's transient nature, a central meditation for warriors who might not live to see another spring. The formal switching from winter to spring garments becomes a community ceremony that reinforces social bonds and cultural continuity. Summer adaptations address both practical and spiritual concerns. Lighter silks and cotton fabrics provide physical comfort during humid months while maintaining the formal appearance essential for samurai dignity. Cooling colors, pale blues, subtle greens, pristine whites, create psychological relief from oppressive heat while reflecting the spiritual discipline required to maintain equilibrium during challenging conditions. Special summer accessories, including fans and cooling scarves, serve ceremonial as well as practical functions. Autumn's clothing changes prepare for introspection and aesthetic contemplation that characterize the season. Deeper colors, rich browns, burnished golds, subtle reds, reflect the natural world's transformation while creating psychological preparation for winter's challenges. Autumn motifs woven into formal garments celebrate the harvest and acknowledge the year's approaching end. The careful packing away of summer clothing becomes a meditation on impermanence that reinforces Buddhist teachings about the illusory nature of all material existence. Winter's wardrobe represents the ultimate expression of samurai aesthetic philosophy. Heavy silks layered for warmth create opportunities for subtle color combinations visible only to the most observant viewers. Dark colors, midnight blues, forest greens, charcoal grays, reflect the season's introspective mood while demonstrating the sophisticated restraint that distinguishes true elegance from mere display. Winter accessories, including hand warmers and foot coverings, must maintain dignity while providing practical protection against harsh conditions. But the most mysterious element of samurai dress remains the 2 swords that complete the warrior's transformation from mortal man to living embodiment of ancient ideals. The longer katana and shorter wakizashi, worn thrust through the hakama's cord according to protocols that vary by rank and occasion, serve purposes that extend far beyond mere weapons. The katana, positioned with its cutting edge upward, represents the samurai's commitment to life, honor, and service to ideals greater than individual survival. Its placement on the left side enables quick drawing with the right hand, but more importantly, it announces to all observers that this individual has earned the right to carry the ultimate symbol of samurai status. The sword's position relative to the body, the angle of its placement, even the color and style of its wrapping cords communicate precise information about the bearer's rank, domain affiliation, and current social status. The wakizashi, the shorter companion sword, carries even deeper significance as the instrument of seppuku, ritual suicide that allows samurai to preserve honor when circumstances demand the ultimate sacrifice. Its presence transforms everyday existence into constant meditation on mortality, duty, and the spiritual principles that make life worth living or worth ending. Every moment of every day, the samurai carries with him the means of his own honorable death, should circumstances require such extreme devotion to principle. Regional variations in samurai dress reflect local conditions, domain preferences, and historical traditions that create distinctive styles within national uniformity. Northern domains adapted clothing for harsh winters that demand additional layers and protective accessories. Southern regions developed summer modifications that maintained dignity while accommodating subtropical heat and humidity. Mountain domains emphasize practicality and durability, while coastal areas incorporate maritime influences and trading connections with distant regions. Economic factors create dramatic variations in clothing quality and elaboration that reflect the vast differences in samurai financial circumstances. Wealthy daimyo possess wardrobes worth small fortunes, featuring the finest silks, elaborate embroidery, and accessories crafted by master artisans. Lower-ranking samurai make do with simpler fabrics and basic accessories while maintaining the essential elements that mark their warrior status. Some impoverished ronin wear patched and mended garments that barely maintain their dignity as members of the samurai class. The final element of this daily transformation involves the arrangement of hair according to strict protocols that announce rank, age, and social status to all observers. The complex top-knot styles require considerable skill and time to achieve properly. Different occasions demand different arrangements, from formal court styles to practical working configurations. The cutting of the top knot represents social death for a samurai, the ultimate disgrace that removes him from warrior society forever. As this elaborate transformation reaches completion, something remarkable has occurred. The vulnerable human being who awakened before dawn has become something greater, not through magic or supernatural intervention, but through the accumulated weight of countless small ritual acts that connect him to ideals, ancestors, and cosmic principles that transcend individual existence. Standing fully dressed in the growing morning light, the samurai embodies centuries of cultural refinement, spiritual discipline, and aesthetic achievement that represent Japan's highest civilizational accomplishments. But this transformation exacts a price: the burden of maintaining absolute perfection in every gesture, every word, every moment of the day ahead. The clothes make the samurai, but they also imprison him within expectations that demand nothing less than complete dedication to honor, duty, and spiritual excellence. With his physical transformation complete, the samurai must now address another fundamental aspect of daily existence that reveals yet more mysteries about this enigmatic warrior culture: the complex world of samurai cuisine and the profound spiritual significance of breaking the daily fast. Breaking the fast, food as philosophy. Now, adorned in the ceremonial armor of silk and tradition, the samurai faces yet another mystery that reveals the profound depths of warrior culture. The morning meal that awaits him is not simply sustenance for the body, but spiritual nourishment for the soul. What appears to be a simple breakfast represents one of the most sophisticated philosophical systems ever developed around the act of eating. A complex ritual that transforms basic human necessity into profound meditation on life, death, and humanity's relationship with the natural world. The dining chamber, like every space in the samurai residence, has been prepared according to ancient protocols that govern not merely the placement of food, but the entire spiritual atmosphere surrounding consumption. Low lacquered tables, positioned to face specific directions according to seasonal requirements and astrological considerations, hold carefully arranged implements that serve purposes far beyond their practical function. Each bowl, each utensil, each serving vessel carries symbolic meaning that connects the individual meal to cosmic forces governing existence itself. But here emerges the first paradox that confounds Western understanding. Why do these legendary warriors, famous for their martial prowess and battlefield courage, approach a simple morning meal with the same reverence they might show before a life-or-death duel? The answer lies hidden in philosophical traditions that transformed every aspect of samurai existence into opportunities for spiritual development and cultural refinement. The foundation of samurai culinary philosophy rests upon the Buddhist concept of Ichiju Sansai, one soup, three dishes, a deceptively simple framework that actually represents centuries of spiritual and aesthetic development. This arrangement doesn't merely organize food. It creates a mandala of flavors, textures, and visual elements that reflects the cosmic order itself. The central soup represents the life force that sustains all existence. The three accompanying dishes symbolize the three jewels of Buddhism: the Buddha, the Dharma, teaching, and the Sangha, community of believers. The morning meal begins with the most sacred element, rice, which carries significance that transcends mere nutrition. For the samurai, rice represents the foundation of all existence in Japan, the agricultural base that supports civilization, the currency that measures wealth and status, the very substance that enables life itself to continue. Each grain of rice consumed becomes an act of communion with the farmers who produced it, the ancestors who developed cultivation techniques, and the natural forces that enabled the harvest to succeed. The preparation and serving of rice follows ritual patterns as precise as any religious ceremony. The ideal consistency requires exactly the right amount of water, heated to specific temperatures, cooked for predetermined periods that vary according to seasonal conditions and regional preferences. The rice must be neither too soft nor too firm, neither too wet nor too dry. Achieving perfection demands skills passed down through generations of samurai families who understood that excellence in small matters prepared one for greatness in larger challenges. But the true mystery of samurai rice consumption lies in the spiritual practices that accompany each meal. Before touching the first grain, the samurai pauses in silent gratitude, not merely polite acknowledgement, but profound recognition of the interconnected web of existence that makes this moment possible. The earth that nurtured the grain, the rain that provided water, the sun that enabled photosynthesis, the farmers who planted and harvested, the merchants who transported the crop, the servants who prepared the meal, all become present in this single act of consumption. The soup that accompanies rice reveals another layer of culinary complexity that challenges modern assumptions about simple warrior meals. Traditional miso soup, prepared from fermented soybean paste, represents one of Japan's most sophisticated food technologies, a preservation and nutrition system that sustained entire populations through harsh winters and difficult times. But for the samurai, miso soup carries additional significance as a symbol of transformation. Simple soybeans, through the mysterious process of fermentation, become something entirely new while retaining their essential nature. Seasonal variations in soup preparation demonstrate the samurai's profound connection to natural cycles that governed every aspect of existence. Spring soups feature young vegetables and fresh herbs that celebrate renewal and growth. Summer preparations emphasize cooling ingredients and lighter textures that provide relief from oppressive heat while maintaining nutritional balance. Autumn soups incorporate harvest vegetables and richer flavors that prepare the body for winter's challenges. Winter versions rely on preserved ingredients and warming spices that sustain life force during the darkest months. The three accompanying dishes reveal the aesthetic principles that transform samurai meals into artistic expressions, rivaling any tea ceremony or flower arrangement. Color harmony requires that each dish contribute specific visual elements that create pleasing combinations without overwhelming the senses. Textural variety ensures that each bite provides different sensations: crisp vegetables, tender fish, smooth tofu, that engage multiple aspects of consciousness. Flavor balance achieves subtle interactions between sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami elements that create complex taste experiences impossible to achieve through simple combinations. But perhaps the most mysterious aspect of samurai cuisine involves the elaborate system of food taboos that governed what warriors could and could not consume. These restrictions, far from arbitrary rules, reflect deep anxieties about language, symbolism, and spiritual contamination that shaped every aspect of samurai psychology. Certain fish became forbidden not because of taste or nutrition, but because their names resembled words associated with defeat or death. The poisonous fugu was avoided not merely for safety reasons, but because consuming it represented an inappropriate flirtation with mortality. Death should come through honorable service, not accidental poisoning. Specific preparation methods were forbidden because they resembled seppuku or other forms of ritual suicide, making the food itself a reminder of shameful possibilities rather than honorable service. Regional variations in morning meals reflect local conditions, available ingredients, and historical traditions that create distinctive culinary cultures within the broader samurai framework. Coastal domains incorporate fresh seafood and seaweed that connect warriors to maritime traditions and ocean resources. Mountain regions emphasize preserved foods and root vegetables that sustain life through harsh winters and isolated conditions. River valleys feature freshwater fish and specialized agricultural products that reflect unique ecological relationships. Northern domains developed sophisticated preservation techniques that enabled varied nutrition throughout extended winter periods. Fermented vegetables, dried fish, and carefully stored grains provided essential nutrients when fresh ingredients became unavailable. Southern regions emphasized cooling foods and lighter preparation methods that maintained health during humid subtropical summers. Each regional variation represents centuries of adaptation that connected samurai to local environments while maintaining essential cultural unity. The economic disparities within samurai society create dramatic differences in morning meal elaboration and quality that reflect the vast gap between wealthy daimyo and struggling lower-ranking warriors. Wealthy samurai enjoy elaborate multi-course morning meals featuring rare ingredients, expert preparation, and artistic presentation that rivals imperial court dining. Multiple types of rice, exotic vegetables, and carefully prepared delicacies demonstrate both economic power and cultural sophistication. Meanwhile, lower-ranking samurai often subsist on simple rice porridge, basic miso soup, and pickled vegetables that provide minimal nutrition while maintaining the essential ceremonial elements that preserve their identity as members of the warrior class. Some impoverished ronin reduce their morning meals to little more than rice and tea, yet they continue to observe the spiritual practices and aesthetic considerations that connect them to samurai cultural traditions. The act of eating itself follows prescribed protocols that transform consumption into meditation on impermanence, gratitude, and proper relationships with the natural world. Each bite requires conscious attention rather than mindless consumption. Chewing becomes deliberate, savoring each flavor while contemplating the processes that brought this food to existence. Swallowing represents acceptance of dependence on forces beyond individual control. The conclusion of the morning meal involves practices that prepare the samurai for the day's challenges while acknowledging the temporary nature of all physical satisfaction. Cleaning the eating implements becomes an act of respect for the objects that enable nourishment. Proper disposal of any remaining food demonstrates awareness of waste and gratitude for abundance. Silent reflection on the meal's significance prepares the mind for subsequent activities that will require complete attention and dedication. Tea drinking, which accompanies and follows the morning meal, represents yet another layer of complexity that reveals the sophisticated aesthetic principles governing samurai daily life. The selection of appropriate tea varieties, the preparation methods, the serving protocols, and the appreciation techniques all contribute to cultural practices that transform simple beverage consumption into profound artistic expression. As the morning meal concludes and the samurai prepares to begin the day's formal activities, he is engaged in yet another transformative ritual that connects individual existence to cosmic principles, cultural traditions, and spiritual ideals that transcend mere physical survival. The mysteries of samurai cuisine thus reveal themselves as sophisticated systems for maintaining cultural identity, spiritual discipline, and aesthetic refinement that prepared warriors for whatever challenges the day might bring. With physical and spiritual nourishment complete, the samurai must now navigate the complex social hierarchies and varied responsibilities that define daily existence for different ranks within this extraordinary warrior culture. The hierarchy of service, understanding your place. As the last drops of morning tea settle and the breakfast implements are carefully cleaned and stored, a profound truth begins to emerge that shatters any simple understanding of samurai society. The warrior who has just completed his morning rituals exists within a social hierarchy so complex, so rigidly stratified, and so absolutely determining of every subsequent moment that his entire day, indeed, his entire life, has already been prescribed by forces beyond his individual control. The mystery deepens when we realize that this hierarchy encompasses not one type of samurai, but dozens of distinct ranks, each living according to entirely different realities while sharing the same cultural identity. But here lies the most confounding paradox of all. How can a single class of people, all called by the same name, all bound by the same codes of honor, all carrying the same symbolic swords, live such dramatically different existences that they might as well inhabit separate worlds? The answer reveals the true genius and ultimate tragedy of samurai society, a system so sophisticated in its gradations of power and responsibility that it created not one warrior culture, but an entire spectrum of human experience ranging from unimaginable luxury to desperate poverty, from absolute authority to complete powerlessness. At the apex of this pyramid stands a figure whose morning meal we have just witnessed, but whose daily reality extends far beyond anything we can easily comprehend. The daimyo, lord of domains that might encompass hundreds of thousands of people and produce wealth equivalent to small European kingdoms. For these exalted figures, the completion of morning rituals signals the beginning of responsibilities so vast, so complex, and so fraught with political danger that a single wrong decision could doom not merely themselves, but thousands of retainers who depend upon their wisdom and leadership. The daimyo's morning schedule, beginning immediately after his carefully orchestrated breakfast, reveals the crushing weight of absolute authority in a society where power and responsibility are inseparably linked. Private audiences with senior retainers, known as kero, require mastery of political subtleties that would challenge modern diplomats. Each conversation carries implications that ripple through domain administration, affecting everything from tax collection to military readiness, from public works projects to judicial decisions that determine life and death for domain inhabitants. Consider the staggering complexity of managing domains like Kaga, which produced over 1 million koku of rice annually, wealth that funded elaborate castle construction, maintained thousands of retainers, and supported cultural achievements that rivaled imperial court sophistication. The daimyo responsible for such domains lived in constant awareness that their decisions affected not merely their own honor, but the survival and prosperity of entire populations who looked to them for leadership, protection, and wise governance. Yet even these powerful lords lived within constraints that would astonish modern observers. The Senkin Kotai system, instituted by the Tokugawa shogunate, required daimyo to maintain elaborate residences in both their home domains and Edo, alternating their presence annually while leaving family members as hostages to ensure loyalty. This system transformed powerful regional lords into eternal commuters whose lives were spent either traveling between their obligations or managing the financial strain of maintaining dual households that often consumed 115% of domain revenues. Below the daimyo, yet still occupying positions of considerable privilege and responsibility, stood the hatamoto, bannermen whose direct service to the shogun earned them stipends ranging from 100 to 10,000 koku annually, along with the precious right of personal audience with the supreme military authority. These middle-ranking samurai experienced daily lives that balanced administrative competence with cultural sophistication, practical responsibility with aesthetic refinement. The typical hatamoto's morning, following his ritual breakfast, might involve attendance at Edo Castle according to rotation schedules that required precise knowledge of court etiquette and appropriate dress for specific occasions. The famous kamishimo, matching jacket and hakama ensemble featuring domain crests, announced their right to participate in governance while simultaneously marking their subordinate position within the larger hierarchy. Court service demanded not only administrative competence, but cultural accomplishments that demonstrated the refinement expected of samurai who advised the nation's rulers. But the financial pressures facing even successful Hatamoto reveal the economic contradictions that plagued samurai society throughout the peaceful Edo period. Fixed rice stipends, established during the early 17th century, gradually lost purchasing power as Japan's economy evolved toward monetary exchange and commercial development. Many Hatamoto found themselves trapped between the expensive lifestyle demands of their rank and inadequate income that forced them into debt, side businesses, or increasingly desperate expedients to maintain appearances essential for social survival. The case of Katsu Kokichi, a low-ranking Hatamoto whose autobiography provides rare insight into middle-class samurai struggles, illuminates the daily reality facing thousands of warriors caught between honorable status and economic hardship. With only 41 koku annual stipend, Katsu supplemented his income through sword dealing, money lending, and various schemes that pushed the boundaries of acceptable samurai behavior while maintaining the cultural pretensions essential for class membership. Descending further into the hierarchy brings us to the vast majority of samurai, lower-ranking warriors whose daily lives bore little resemblance to the popular image of powerful, wealthy swordsmen. These hisamurai, literally knee-sitting warriors, earned minimal stipends that provided subsistence-level existence, while requiring them to maintain expensive obligations of class membership that often pushed families into poverty despite their elevated social status. Morning duties for lower-ranking samurai typically involved guard assignments, patrol responsibilities, and clerical work that demonstrated the bureaucratic reality of most samurai employment during peaceful periods. Gate security at castles, message delivery between administrative offices, record keeping for domain operations. These mundane tasks occupied warriors whose ancestors had charged in a battle on horseback, but who now spent their days with ink brushes and account ledgers. Regional variations in samurai treatment created dramatically different experiences for warriors of similar rank, depending upon the wealth and policies of their domains. Progressive domains like Chashu maintained sophisticated systems with 40 different gradations within the military class, providing opportunities for advancement and recognition that motivated excellent service. Wealthy domains like Kaga could afford to provide even a Shigeru, the lowest-ranking samurai, with individual houses and gardens that ensured basic dignity and comfort. Conversely, poor domains struggling with chronic financial problems often failed to pay stipends regularly, forcing samurai families to engage in commercial activities or crafts production that technically violated class restrictions but became necessary for survival. Some domains didn't clearly differentiate between a Shigeru and ordinary servants, creating ambiguous social positions that undermined the clear hierarchies that defined samurai identity. At the bottom of the official samurai hierarchy stood the Shigeru, foot soldiers whose status as members of the warrior class remained contested throughout the Edo period. These men, often recruited from peasant families during times of military need, found themselves caught between worlds, too elevated for common society, but too lowly for full samurai recognition. Their daily lives combined military training with manual labor, cultural education with economic struggle, honorable service with social insecurity that reflected the contradictions inherent in Japan's rigid class system. But perhaps the most mysterious and tragic figures within samurai society were the Ronin, masterless warriors whose lords had died, been disgraced, or lost their domains through political misfortune. Estimates suggest that over 400,000 Ronin existed after the Battle of Sekigahara in 1600, creating a massive population of displaced warriors who maintained their cultural identity while lacking the institutional support that made samurai lifestyle possible. Ronin daily existence required constant improvisation and adaptation that tested samurai values against harsh economic reality. Teaching positions at private schools provided respectable income for educated Ronin, but competition was fierce and compensation often inadequate. Martial arts instruction offered another honorable profession, though the peaceful Edo period reduced demand for combat training. Some Ronin became merchants or craftsmen, technically violating class restrictions but accepting practical necessity over theoretical purity. The psychological challenges facing Ronin often proved more difficult than economic hardships. Maintaining warrior identity without institutional support, preserving cultural practices without adequate resources, upholding honor codes while engaging in activities that contradicted samurai ideals. These conflicts created internal tensions that some Ronin resolved through alcohol, gambling, or criminal activities that further undermined their social position. Yet many Ronin demonstrated remarkable resilience and creativity in adapting samurai values to changed circumstances. Private tutoring in calligraphy, poetry, and Confucian classics provided income while preserving cultural transmission. Bodyguard services for wealthy merchants created employment that utilized martial skills while maintaining honorable social function. Some Ronin opened schools or academies that became centers of learning and cultural preservation. The diversity of samurai daily experience thus reveals itself as far more complex than any simple narrative about warrior culture can encompass. From daimyo managing affairs of state to Ronin struggling for daily survival, from wealthy Hatamoto participating in governance to impoverished Ishigaru performing manual labor, the samurai class encompassed virtually every form of human experience possible within feudal Japanese society. As mourning activities begin in earnest across this vast hierarchy, each rank faces entirely different challenges and opportunities that will define their day. Yet all remain bound by common cultural ideals, shared aesthetic values, and collective identity that transcends individual circumstances, a unity within diversity that represents one of history's most sophisticated social organizations. Mourning duties, the weight of responsibility. Now, with their places in the great hierarchy firmly established and mourning nourishment complete, these warriors of vastly different circumstances must confront the central paradox that defines samurai existence throughout the peaceful Edo period. How does a class bred for warfare adapt when war itself has vanished? As the morning sun climbs higher over castle towns across Japan, revealing the bustling activity of a society at peace, samurai of every rank begin daily duties that would astonish their battlefield ancestors. Duties that transform legendary warriors into something unprecedented in world history. Sword-carrying bureaucrats whose deadliest weapons have become ink brushes and administrative ledgers. The mystery deepens when we examine what these morning duties actually entailed. For beneath the surface of routine administrative tasks lay a sophisticated system of governance that required skills far more complex than martial prowess. The samurai who once charged into battle wielding naginata and arrows now fought different wars against inefficiency, corruption, natural disasters, and the countless mundane challenges of governing a population that had grown to over 30 million souls during 2.5 centuries of unprecedented peace. At the highest levels of this administrative hierarchy, the daimyo's morning duties reveal responsibilities so vast and consequential that a single poor decision could destabilize entire regions. The lord of a major domain, settling into his administrative chambers as morning light illuminates silk wall hangings and polished wooden surfaces, faces challenges that would overwhelm modern government officials equipped with computers, telecommunications, and vast support staffs. Consider the morning agenda of a typical daimyo during the height of Edo period prosperity, reviewing overnight dispatches from district administrators reporting rice yields, tax collection progress, and local disputes requiring arbitration. Each report demands careful analysis because the information affects not merely abstract statistics, but the survival and prosperity of hundreds of thousands of people whose lives depend upon wise leadership and effective governance. Agricultural reports arrive with particular urgency because rice production forms the foundation of domain wealth and political power. Weather conditions, pest infestations, irrigation problems, labor disputes, all require immediate attention and often direct intervention. The daimyo must understand not merely the numbers, but their implications. Will this harvest support the stipends paid to thousands of retainers? Can the domain meet its obligations to the shogunate while maintaining adequate reserves for emergencies? Are peasant families receiving sufficient nutrition to maintain health and productivity? Judicial responsibilities consume additional morning hours as the daimyo reviews court decisions, petitions for mercy, and appeals of lower court rulings. The Tokugawa legal system granted daimyo considerable autonomy in governing their domains, but this freedom came with crushing responsibility for ensuring justice, maintaining order, and protecting both powerful and powerless inhabitants from abuse and exploitation. Criminal cases require particular attention because they often involve samurai whose misconduct reflects upon domain honor and administrative competence. Disputes between samurai families can escalate into vendettas that threaten regional stability. Commercial conflicts involving merchants and artisans affect economic prosperity that supports the entire social structure. Each decision sets precedents that influence future cases and shapes domain culture for generations. Military responsibilities, though reduced during peaceful periods, still demand regular attention as daimyo balance the maintenance of warrior traditions with the practical needs of administrative governance. Morning reviews of domain, military strength, training schedules, and equipment maintenance ensure readiness for potential conflicts while demonstrating continued loyalty to warrior ideals that justify samurai political supremacy. Castle fortification inspections, conducted regularly despite the absence of military threats, serve multiple purposes beyond mere defense preparation. They provide opportunities for the daimyo to interact personally with retainers, observe firsthand the condition of domain infrastructure, and demonstrate active leadership that maintains morale and loyalty among subordinates who might otherwise feel forgotten in the comfortable routines of peaceful existence. For the middle-ranking Hatamoto, serving directly under the shogunate, morning duties involve a different but equally demanding set of responsibilities that require sophisticated skills in protocol, administration, and cultural refinement. These bannermen, gathering at Edo Castle according to rotation schedules that ensure continuous governance coverage, participate in the complex bureaucratic machinery that governs the world's largest city and coordinates policies affecting the entire nation. Court attendance obligations begin with elaborate preparation rituals that extend far beyond simple dressing. The appropriate level of formal attire depends upon the specific nature of assigned duties, the rank of officials being encountered, and seasonal considerations that govern everything from color choices to fabric weights. A single mistake in protocol can damage career prospects and bring shame upon one's entire family lineage. Administrative assignments for Hatamoto range from routine record-keeping to complex policy analysis that requires deep understanding of legal precedents, economic principles, and political relationships spanning the entire feudal hierarchy. Morning duties might include reviewing merchant guild petitions, analyzing tax revenue reports from distant provinces, or preparing briefing documents for senior officials who must make decisions affecting millions of people. Judicial responsibilities occupy many Hatamoto who serve in various courts and administrative tribunals that handle the countless legal disputes arising in a complex urban society. Commercial law, property rights, family inheritance disputes, criminal prosecutions, all require officials with education, cultural refinement, and sound judgment capable of balancing competing interests while maintaining social stability and economic prosperity. For lower-ranking samurai, morning duties reveal the stark reality that the vast majority of warriors spent their days in activities that bore little resemblance to popular images of samurai life. Guard duties at castle gates, patrol responsibilities in urban districts, clerical work in domain offices. These mundane tasks occupied thousands of men whose ancestors had earned fame through martial valor, but who now measured their success through careful penmanship and attention to bureaucratic detail. Castle guard assignments follow rotation schedules that ensure security while providing employment for samurai whose stipends alone couldn't support their families. These positions require constant alertness despite the minimal probability of actual threats. Guards must recognize authorized personnel, maintain proper protocol with visitors of various ranks, and demonstrate the disciplined bearing that preserves samurai dignity even in routine circumstances. Patrol duties in castle towns involve responsibilities that modern police officers would recognize: maintaining public order, investigating minor crimes, mediating disputes between merchants and customers, and ensuring that the complex regulations governing urban life are properly observed. These activities require diplomatic skills, legal knowledge, and cultural sensitivity that transform former warriors into community peacekeepers. Administrative positions in domain offices provide essential services that keep complex governmental machinery functioning smoothly. Record keeping, document copying, message delivery, and basic clerical support may seem mundane, but they require literacy, attention to detail, and cultural competence that reflect the sophisticated educational achievements of even lower-ranking samurai. Seasonal variations in morning duties create dramatically different work patterns that connect administrative responsibilities to natural cycles governing agricultural and social life. Spring brings intensive activity related to rice planting, tax assessment, and preparation for the active season ahead. Summer duties focus on infrastructure maintenance, judicial proceedings, and diplomatic activities that benefit from favorable weather conditions. Autumn morning responsibilities center on harvest supervision, tax collection, and preparation for winter challenges that will test domain resources and administrative competence. Winter duties emphasize indoor activities like document review, educational programs, and cultural events that maintain social cohesion during months of reduced outdoor activity. Regional variations in samurai duties reflect local conditions, domain policies, and historical traditions that create distinctive administrative cultures within the broader national framework. Coastal domains require officials familiar with maritime commerce, fishing regulations, and port security. Mountain regions need administrators capable of managing forestry resources, mineral extraction, and transportation challenges unique to difficult terrain. The psychological burden of these responsibilities weighs heavily upon samurai, who must balance warrior identity with bureaucratic reality. Morning duties that involve life or death decisions for domain inhabitants carry moral weight equivalent to battlefield choices, yet they receive little recognition or glory compared to martial achievements celebrated in literature and popular culture. Financial pressures add additional stress, as many samurai struggle to maintain appropriate lifestyle standards on inadequate stipends, while performing duties that require expensive clothing, cultural education, and social obligations. The gap between warrior status and economic reality creates tensions that influence every aspect of daily existence. Training obligations must be balanced with administrative duties, as samurai maintain martial skills through daily practice that preserves warrior traditions while demonstrating continued readiness for potential conflicts. Morning sword practice, martial arts training, and military drills occur before or after bureaucratic responsibilities, adding hours to already demanding schedules. As morning duties consume the early hours of daylight, samurai across the social hierarchy find themselves engaged in activities that require skills their warrior ancestors never imagined. Complex reasoning, cultural sophistication, administrative competence, and diplomatic sensitivity that transform battlefield veterans into sophisticated civil servants whose contributions to social stability and cultural development rival any military achievements. With morning administrative obligations fulfilled, the samurai day progresses toward its midpoint, where entirely different mysteries await examination. The midday pause, reflection, and sustenance. As the morning's administrative burdens reach their crescendo and the sun climbs to its zenith above the meticulously ordered landscapes of feudal Japan, a profound transformation occurs throughout samurai society. The relentless pace of governance, the careful attention to bureaucratic detail, and the constant vigilance required for maintaining social order suddenly yield to something far more mysterious. A collective pause that reveals depths of samurai culture invisible during the busier hours of official duty. This midday interlude, occurring precisely when shadows grow shortest and the day's heat reaches its peak, represents far more than simple rest or practical meal timing. It embodies a sophisticated understanding of human psychology, spiritual development, and the delicate balance between action and contemplation that distinguish samurai culture from every other warrior tradition in world history. But what makes this pause truly enigmatic is how it simultaneously serves individual renewal and social cohesion while maintaining the constant awareness of mortality that defined every aspect of samurai existence. The midday meal, known as hirameshi, arrives with ceremonial precision that rivals the morning's elaborate breakfast rituals. Yet this second formal eating period of the day carries distinctly different spiritual and social significance that reflects the unique psychological state of warriors who have completed their morning obligations while facing afternoon challenges that remain shrouded in uncertainty. Where breakfast prepared the spirit for unknown trials ahead, the midday meal acknowledges accomplishments achieved while providing strength for continued service. But here emerges another paradox that confounds simple understanding. Why do samurai approach their midday meal with such elaborate formality when practical efficiency would seem more appropriate for busy administrators and government officials? The answer lies hidden in philosophical traditions that recognize the profound spiritual significance of pausing at the day's mathematical center, the moment when time itself divides between past and future, requiring conscious choice about how remaining hours will be utilized. The preparation and presentation of midday meals follows seasonal patterns that connect samurai to natural cycles governing all existence. Spring midday meals emphasize fresh vegetables and young herbs that celebrate renewal and growth while providing energy for afternoon activities. Light preparations featuring bamboo shoots, early peas, and delicate fish reflect the season's emphasis on new beginnings and gentle awakening from winter's dormancy. Summer midday dining adapts to oppressive heat and humidity that challenge both physical endurance and mental clarity. Cooling foods predominate. Chilled tofu preparations, cucumber dishes, and light broths that provide nutrition without overwhelming digestive systems already stressed by challenging weather conditions. Cold noodle dishes, served with precisely arranged garnishes and cooling condiments, demonstrate the sophisticated techniques developed for maintaining health and energy during Japan's demanding subtropical summers. Autumn meals celebrate harvest abundance while acknowledging the approaching end of the agricultural year. Heartier preparations featuring root vegetables, preserved foods, and richer flavors provide psychological and physical preparation for winter's challenges. The aesthetic presentation emphasizes the season's beauty through carefully chosen colors and arrangements that honor the natural world's transformation while providing spiritual sustenance for contemplating impermanence. Winter midday meals provide warming comfort that sustains both body and spirit during the year's harshest months. Hot soups, warming spices, and preserved foods demonstrate the careful planning and resource management essential for surviving difficult conditions. These meals often feature elaborate presentations that provide psychological relief from winter's austerity while maintaining the cultural standards that distinguish samurai from common society. The social dynamics surrounding midday meals reveal complex hierarchies and relationships that govern every aspect of samurai interaction. High-ranking daimyo dine in elaborate privacy that reflects their exalted status while maintaining connection to subordinates through carefully structured service protocols. Multiple courses, expertly prepared and artistically presented, demonstrate both wealth and cultural sophistication essential for maintaining authority in a society that values aesthetic accomplishment alongside administrative competence. Middle-ranking samurai often share midday meals with colleagues of similar status, creating opportunities for informal discussion and relationship building that complement formal morning duties. These gatherings balance social pleasure with practical networking as samurai exchange information, discuss policy questions, and maintain relationships essential for career advancement and effective governance. Lower-ranking samurai frequently eat more modest midday meals that nonetheless observe essential ceremonial elements, preserving their identity as members of the warrior class. Simple rice, basic soup, and minimal side dishes provide adequate nutrition while demonstrating continued adherence to cultural practices that distinguish them from common laborers despite similar economic circumstances. The timing of midday meals reflects sophisticated understanding of human psychology and energy management that enabled samurai to maintain peak performance throughout demanding schedules. The pause occurs precisely when morning energy begins to flag and afternoon challenges loom ahead, providing essential renewal that prevents fatigue from undermining effectiveness in administrative or military duties. Regional variations in midday dining customs reflect local conditions, available ingredients, and historical traditions that create distinctive cultural patterns within national samurai identity. Coastal domains incorporate fresh seafood and maritime specialties that connect warriors to oceanic resources and trading relationships. Mountain regions emphasize preserved foods and hearty preparations suited to challenging terrain and harsh weather conditions. Northern domains adapt midday meals to shorter daylight hours and cold conditions that require additional calories and warming foods for maintaining health and energy. Southern regions develop lighter preparations and cooling techniques that address subtropical heat while maintaining nutritional balance essential for sustained activity. But perhaps the most mysterious aspect of samurai midday observances involves the brief rest periods that follow formal dining. Moments of profound contemplation that reveal depths of warrior psychology invisible during active periods. These interludes, lasting typically 15 to 30 minutes, provide opportunities for meditation, reflection, and spiritual renewal that prepare samurai for afternoon challenges while maintaining connection to fundamental principles governing their existence. The physical posture adopted during midday rest follows specific protocols that reflect spiritual discipline and cultural refinement. Seated meditation in formal seiza position demonstrates continued adherence to warrior bearing even during relaxation. Some samurai prefer reclining positions that provide physical rest while maintaining alertness essential for rapid response to unexpected demands. Seasonal variations in rest activities adapt to changing conditions and opportunities for spiritual development. Spring rest periods often involve contemplation of natural beauty visible through carefully positioned windows or garden views that celebrate renewal and growth. Summer interludes emphasize cooling practices and techniques for maintaining energy despite oppressive heat. Autumn rest periods focus on aesthetic appreciation and philosophical reflection on impermanence and seasonal change. Winter interludes provide opportunities for indoor meditation and study that compensate for reduced outdoor activities and shortened daylight hours. The social interactions occurring during midday pauses reveal informal aspects of samurai culture that complement formal protocols governing official duties. Conversations between colleagues explore topics ranging from administrative challenges to cultural interests, family concerns, to philosophical questions that demonstrate the breadth of samurai intellectual engagement. These informal discussions often prove more valuable than formal meetings for developing understanding, building consensus, and maintaining morale essential for effective governance. The relaxed atmosphere enables frank exchange of ideas and concerns that might be suppressed during official proceedings governed by strict hierarchical protocols. Poetry composition during midday interludes provides creative outlet and cultural expression that balances administrative responsibilities with aesthetic development. Seasonal themes, personal emotions, and philosophical insights find expression in carefully crafted verses that demonstrate literary skill while providing psychological release from bureaucratic pressures. Calligraphy practice offers another form of midday enrichment that combines artistic expression with spiritual discipline. The careful formation of characters, the selection of appropriate texts, and the aesthetic arrangement of written elements create meditative practices that refresh the mind while developing cultural competencies essential for samurai identity. The awareness of mortality that permeates all samurai activities intensifies during midday pauses when the day's mathematical center forces contemplation of time's passage and life's finite nature. The recognition that afternoon hours might bring unexpected challenges, emergency summons, or even honorable death adds profound significance to these moments of rest and reflection. Financial concerns often intrude upon midday tranquility as samurai grapple with economic pressures that threaten their ability to maintain appropriate lifestyle standards. Debt worries, inadequate stipends, and expensive social obligations create stress that influences even peaceful interludes while demonstrating the gap between warrior status and economic reality. Training obligations must be balanced with rest needs, as samurai maintain martial skills through daily practice that preserves warrior traditions while providing physical exercise essential for health and readiness. Brief sword practice, martial arts exercises, or equipment maintenance often fill midday interludes with activities that connect administrative officials to their martial heritage. As midday shadows begin to lengthen and the sun starts its afternoon descent toward the western horizon, samurai across the social hierarchy conclude their pauses renewed in body and spirit, prepared for whatever challenges the remaining daylight hours might bring. The mysteries of midday rest thus reveal themselves as sophisticated systems for maintaining peak performance, cultural identity, and spiritual equilibrium throughout demanding lives dedicated to service and honor. With physical sustenance and spiritual renewal complete, the samurai day progresses toward its cultural pinnacle. The afternoon pursuits that transformed these warriors into guardians of Japan's highest aesthetic and intellectual achievements. Afternoon pursuits, the cultured warrior. As midday tranquility yields to the afternoon's lengthening shadows, the samurai world undergoes yet another transformation that would astound anyone who imagines these legendary warriors as crude fighting men obsessed solely with martial prowess. For what emerges during these precious afternoon hours reveals perhaps the most extraordinary aspect of samurai civilization, a warrior class that considered cultural refinement not merely pleasant diversion, but essential spiritual practice as important as swordsmanship for achieving the perfect balance between life and death that defined their existence. The mystery deepens when we realize that many samurai spent more hours perfecting their poetry than their sword techniques, more time arranging flowers than practicing archery, more energy mastering tea ceremony than studying military strategy. How did a class bred for warfare become the guardian of Japan's highest cultural achievements? Why did these men who carried the ultimate instruments of violence dedicate themselves with equal passion to creating beauty that could bring tears to the most hardened warrior's eyes? The answer lies hidden in a philosophical revolution that transformed the very meaning of strength. True power, samurai discovered, required not merely the ability to take life, but the wisdom to understand why life was worth preserving. Cultural pursuits weren't escapes from warrior duty. They were the spiritual training that made warriors worthy of the terrible responsibilities they carried. Every poem composed, every flower arranged, every tea ceremony performed became preparation for the ultimate moment when death might demand perfect acceptance with grace and dignity. The afternoon's cultural pinnacle arrives with the tea ceremony, an art form so sophisticated and spiritually profound that it transforms a simple beverage into one of humanity's most complex aesthetic and philosophical achievements. But to call it merely a ceremony misses its true significance entirely. What unfolds in the tea room represents nothing less than concentrated spiritual practice that distills centuries of Buddhist wisdom, Confucian ethics, and indigenous Japanese aesthetic sensibility into a few precious hours of transcendent experience. The preparation for tea ceremony begins long before guests arrive, as the host transforms his entire consciousness through meticulous attention to details that would seem obsessive to untrained observers. The selection of appropriate utensils requires consideration of seasonal themes, guest relationships, historical associations, and spiritual symbolism that connects each implement to cosmic principles governing existence itself. A single tea bowl might be chosen because its subtle imperfections embody wabi-sabi aesthetics, celebrating the beauty found in transience and asymmetry. The tea room itself, typically no larger than 4.5 tatami mats, creates an intimate universe completely separate from the outside world's concerns and hierarchies. Within this sacred space, the normal rules of samurai society temporarily dissolve as participants focus entirely upon the present moment. The simple acts of preparing and sharing tea, and the profound spiritual truths revealed through careful attention to immediate experience. Sun no Rikyu, the 16th century tea master who refined the ceremony into its definitive form, established 4 fundamental principles that transform tea drinking into spiritual practice. Wa, harmony; Ke, respect; Sei, purity; and Jaku, tranquility. These aren't abstract concepts, but practical guidelines that govern every gesture, every word, every moment of awareness during the ceremony. Achieving perfect expression of these principles requires years of dedicated study and practice that parallel the intensive training demanded for martial excellence. The seasonal variations in tea ceremony demonstrate the samurai's profound connection to natural cycles that governed every aspect of traditional Japanese life. Spring ceremonies celebrate renewal and growth through delicate flower arrangements, light incense selections, and utensils featuring motifs that honor cherry blossoms, young bamboo, and emerging life force. The water temperature, tea preparation methods, and serving protocols all adapt to reflect the season's unique energy and spiritual significance. Summer tea ceremonies address the challenges of oppressive heat through techniques that provide psychological and physical cooling while maintaining ceremonial dignity. Darker tea rooms, cooling utensils, and lighter preparations create environments that offer respite from harsh weather while preserving the spiritual intensity essential for meaningful practice. The selection of appropriate topics for conversation, poetry themes, and artistic references all contribute to creating experiences that refresh participants while deepening their aesthetic understanding. Autumn ceremonies embrace the season's melancholy beauty through careful selection of utensils, arrangements, and themes that acknowledge impermanence while celebrating the profound beauty found in transient existence. The preparation and presentation of autumn teas becomes meditation on mortality that prepares participants for winter's challenges while honoring the year's achievements and transformations. Winter tea ceremonies create warm, intimate environments that provide spiritual sustenance during the year's darkest months. Richer preparations, warming utensils, and contemplative themes offer comfort while maintaining the discipline and attention essential for continued spiritual development. The contrast between harsh outdoor conditions and peaceful indoor environments intensifies appreciation for beauty, companionship, and the precious opportunity for cultural refinement. But tea ceremony represents only one facet of the samurai's comprehensive cultural education. Poetry composition, considered essential for any cultivated warrior, requires mastery of literary traditions, seasonal references, emotional subtlety, and philosophical depth that rival any scholarly achievement. The 31-syllable waka form, with its precise structure of 5-7-5-7-7 syllables, creates constraints that force poets to distill complex emotions and observations into crystalline expressions of extraordinary beauty and power. The afternoon poetry gatherings that occurred regularly in castle towns and domain centers provided opportunities for intellectual competition that replaced martial contests during peaceful periods. These Yudoways poetry competitions required participants to compose verses on assigned themes within strict time limits, demonstrating not only literary skill but mental agility and cultural knowledge essential for success in samurai society. Seasonal poetry themes connect samurai literary practice to natural cycles and traditional aesthetic categories that shape Japanese cultural consciousness. Spring poems celebrate renewal, romance, and natural beauty, while often incorporating subtle references to classical literature and Buddhist teachings about impermanence. Summer verses address themes of endurance, purification, and the spiritual challenges of maintaining equilibrium during difficult conditions. Autumn poetry explores melancholy, separation, and the profound beauty found in decline and loss. Winter compositions focus on solitude, reflection, and the inner strength required for surviving harsh conditions while maintaining hope for renewal. The mastery of seasonal references, known as Kigo, requires encyclopedic knowledge of literary traditions and natural phenomena that distinguishes truly educated samurai from mere pretenders to cultural sophistication. Calligraphy practice, known as Shodo, the way of writing, represents another essential element of samurai cultural education that combines artistic expression with spiritual discipline. The preparation of ink, selection of brushes, and choice of papers become meditative practices that require complete present-moment attention while producing visual art that preserves literary achievements for future generations. The physical act of forming characters demands perfect coordination between mind, body, and spirit that parallels the unity required for effective swordsmanship. Each stroke must be executed with confidence and precision. Hesitation or correction destroys the character's integrity and reveals imperfect mental discipline. The rhythm of brush movement, the flow of ink across paper, and the gradual emergence of meaningful text create experiences that connect practitioners to cosmic principles governing all existence. Regional calligraphy styles reflect local traditions and historical influences that create distinctive aesthetic cultures within national unity. The Chinese-influenced formal styles preferred in some domains contrast with more flowing Japanese adaptations developed in other regions. Individual samurai often specialized in particular styles that express their personality while demonstrating mastery of technical requirements essential for effective communication and artistic achievement. Flower arrangement, known as ikebana, living flowers, provides another avenue for aesthetic development that trains samurai in principles of balance, proportion, and natural harmony essential for spiritual cultivation. The careful selection of seasonal flowers, the precise placement of stems and branches, and the creation of asymmetrical compositions that embody natural beauty require sensitivity and patience that complement martial training while developing different aspects of warrior consciousness. The philosophical principles underlying flower arrangement, respect for natural forms, appreciation of impermanence, and creation of beauty from simple materials, parallel fundamental Buddhist teachings about existence and enlightenment. The practice requires samurai to observe natural processes carefully, understand seasonal cycles intimately, and develop aesthetic sensitivity that enriches all aspects of daily life. Music appreciation and performance add yet another dimension to samurai cultural education through instruments like the biwa, lute, fue, flute, and various percussion instruments that accompanied classical poetry and dramatic performances. Musical training develops timing, breath control, and emotional expression that enhance both artistic accomplishment and spiritual development, while providing social skills essential for cultural gatherings and ceremonial occasions. The integration of multiple cultural pursuits creates comprehensive educational systems that develop all aspects of human potential while maintaining focus on spiritual growth and social responsibility. A typical samurai might spend afternoon hours moving between tea ceremony practice, poetry composition, calligraphy study, and musical performance while maintaining awareness that each activity contributes to overall development as both warrior and human being. Economic factors significantly influence the extent and quality of cultural participation possible for different ranks within samurai society. Wealthy daimyo maintain elaborate cultural establishments with master teachers, rare implements, and extensive libraries that enable sophisticated aesthetic achievement. Lower-ranking samurai often rely on simpler materials and group instruction while maintaining commitment to cultural development within their economic constraints. As afternoon shadows lengthen and evening approaches, samurai conclude their cultural pursuits with renewed appreciation for beauty, deeper understanding of spiritual principles, and enhanced capacity for the aesthetic sensitivity that distinguishes truly cultured warriors from mere fighting men. These mysterious afternoon transformations reveal the profound truth that shaped samurai civilization. Ultimate strength requires not just the power to destroy, but the wisdom to create and preserve what makes existence meaningful. Evening obligations, family, and community. As the golden light of afternoon fades and the first shadows of evening begin to stretch across the carefully manicured gardens of samurai residences, another profound transformation awaits these cultured warriors. The aesthetic refinement and spiritual cultivation that define their afternoon pursuits must now yield to obligations that are simultaneously more intimate and more complex. The intricate web of family relationships, community responsibilities, and domestic duties that reveal perhaps the most human aspect of samurai existence, while maintaining the rigid protocols that governed every moment of their extraordinary lives. Yet here emerges a paradox that challenges our understanding of these legendary figures. How do men train from childhood to embrace death without hesitation? Warriors whose entire identity revolves around honor and service to abstract ideals navigate the tender complexities of marriage, parenthood, and domestic harmony? The answer unveils one of the most sophisticated family systems ever developed. A structure so carefully balanced between affection and duty, intimacy and hierarchy, that it created households capable of producing both fierce warriors and refined cultural guardians across countless generations. The evening meal, known as yoshoku, represents the day's most significant social gathering. Yet its preparation and execution follow protocols as complex as any diplomatic ceremony or military maneuver. Unlike the solitary contemplation of morning breakfast or the collegial atmosphere of midday dining, the evening meal brings together the samurai household in its entirety, a gathering that must balance genuine family warmth with the hierarchical relationships that define every aspect of traditional Japanese society. The timing of this evening assembly varies according to seasonal daylight patterns that connect samurai family life to natural cycles governing all existence. Summer evenings begin earlier to take advantage of extended daylight and avoid the oppressive heat that builds throughout the day. Winter gatherings occur later as shorter days compress family activities into precious hours of artificial illumination provided by candles, oil lamps, and carefully tended fires that create intimate atmospheres within the household's private spaces. But the true mystery of samurai family dining lies not in its timing, but in its extraordinary complexity of social relationships that must be navigated with perfect precision. The seating arrangements alone require consideration of age, gender, family status, seasonal factors, and visiting guests that would challenge modern diplomatic protocol experts. The head of household occupies the position of honor closest to the tokonoma alcove, while other family members arrange themselves according to carefully prescribed patterns that reinforce hierarchical relationships while maintaining family harmony. The role of women within samurai households reveals another layer of complexity that defies simple understanding. The samurai wife, known as Okagata-sama, honorable person of the inner quarters, wields considerable authority over domestic affairs while maintaining the submissive appearance required by Confucian social theory. Her daily management of household finances, servant supervision, children's education, and social obligations requires administrative skills that rival those demanded of her husband's official duties. These remarkable women, educated in classical literature, skilled in poetry composition, accomplished in tea ceremony and flower arrangement, represent one of history's most sophisticated examples of parallel cultural development. While legally subordinate to their husbands, they maintain complete authority over domains essential for family survival and prosperity. Budgeting, food preparation, clothing production, childcare, and the complex social relationships that connect samurai families to their communities. The evening conversations that occur during family dining reveal the informal education systems that transmitted samurai values, cultural knowledge, and practical wisdom from one generation to the next. Children learn proper etiquette through daily observation and gentle correction rather than formal instruction. Stories of ancestral achievements, explanations of family traditions, and discussions of current events provide comprehensive education that supplements formal schooling while reinforcing family identity and cultural continuity. Seasonal variations in family evening activities create dramatically different household atmospheres that reflect natural cycles and cultural observances spanning centuries of tradition. Spring evenings often feature garden contemplation as families appreciate cherry blossoms, early flowers, and the renewal of life force after winter's dormancy. Children participate in seasonal games and activities that connect them to natural phenomena, while developing aesthetic sensitivity essential for cultural refinement. Summer evening gatherings adapt to oppressive heat through techniques that provide physical and psychological relief while maintaining family cohesion. Evening baths, cooling foods, and outdoor activities in private gardens create opportunities for relaxation and informal interaction that strengthen family bonds while providing respite from challenging weather conditions. Autumn evenings emphasize reflection, gratitude, and preparation for winter's challenges through family activities that acknowledge the year's achievements while planning for difficulties ahead. Moon viewing ceremonies, harvest celebrations, and storytelling sessions that honor ancestors and family history create meaningful shared experiences that reinforce cultural values while providing psychological preparation for harsh months approaching. Winter evening gatherings create warm, intimate environments that sustain family relationships during the year's most challenging period. Indoor games, extended conversations, collaborative projects like clothing production or equipment maintenance, and shared reading sessions provide activities that maintain family unity while developing practical skills and cultural knowledge essential for continued prosperity. The relationship between samurai fathers and their children reveals another dimension of complexity that balances genuine affection with the stern discipline required for raising future warriors and cultural guardians. Samurai fathers, despite their often demanding official schedules, typically maintain close involvement in their children's education, moral development, and practical training that prepares them for adult responsibilities within the warrior class. Evening instruction sessions, conducted informally during family time, provide opportunities for fathers to share professional knowledge, cultural wisdom, and practical skills that formal education cannot adequately address. Discussions of administrative challenges, explanations of political relationships, and analysis of historical examples give children insight into the complex realities of samurai existence, while developing analytical skills essential for future success. The training of samurai sons requires particular attention, as fathers must balance encouragement of masculine virtues, courage, loyalty, discipline, honor, with the cultural refinement and intellectual development essential for administrative competence. Evening practice sessions in calligraphy, poetry composition, and basic martial arts provide structured learning opportunities that complement formal education while strengthening father-son relationships. Samurai daughters receive equally comprehensive preparation for their future roles as wives, mothers, and household managers through education that emphasizes cultural accomplishments, domestic skills, and the social competencies essential for maintaining family status and prosperity. Evening instruction in tea ceremony, flower arrangement, music, and literature provides foundation for future success while developing aesthetic sensitivity that enriches family life. Community obligations extend samurai evening responsibilities beyond immediate family concerns to encompass broader social relationships that connect individual households to neighborhood networks, domain administration, and cultural institutions that maintain social stability and cultural continuity. These obligations require careful balance between family time and community service that demonstrates continued commitment to social responsibility. Neighborhood associations, known as makibugyo, organize collective activities that address common concerns like fire prevention, security, dispute resolution, and mutual assistance during emergencies. Samurai participation in these organizations provides essential community leadership while maintaining connections to diverse social groups that include merchants, artisans, and other non-samurai residents. Religious observances require regular family participation in Buddhist temple activities, Shinto shrine ceremonies, and seasonal festivals that connect samurai households to spiritual communities spanning multiple social classes. These activities provide opportunities for religious education, cultural participation, and social interaction that enriches family life while demonstrating continued commitment to traditional values. Educational responsibilities extend beyond immediate family, as many samurai participate in community schools, tutoring programs, and cultural institutions that provide education for neighborhood children regardless of social class. These activities reflect Confucian ideals about social responsibility while providing practical benefits that strengthen community bonds and ensure cultural transmission across generational boundaries. Economic factors significantly influence the complexity and extent of evening family and community activities possible for different ranks within samurai society. Wealthy daimyo families maintain elaborate household establishments with extensive servant staffs that enable sophisticated family gatherings, elaborate entertainment, and generous community participation that reinforces their elevated social status. Middle-ranking samurai families balance more modest resources with continued expectations for cultural refinement and community involvement that require careful financial management and creative adaptation. Evening activities often emphasize simple pleasures, family-centered entertainment, and modest community participation that maintains essential social relationships without exceeding economic capabilities. Lower-ranking samurai families struggle to maintain minimum standards for family dignity and community participation while addressing basic survival needs that compete with cultural obligations for limited resources. Evening activities often combine practical necessity with cultural maintenance as families engage in income-producing crafts, simplified cultural practices, and minimal community involvement that preserves essential social connections. Regional variations in family and community customs create distinctive local traditions within national samurai culture that reflect historical development, geographic conditions, and domain policies affecting social organization. Northern regions emphasize extended family gatherings and community cooperation essential for surviving harsh winter conditions. Southern areas develop different patterns adapted to subtropical climate and distinct cultural influences. As evening activities conclude and families prepare for nighttime rest, samurai households have fulfilled complex obligations that balance intimate relationships with social responsibilities, individual development with community service, and cultural maintenance with practical necessity. These mysterious evening transformations reveal samurai civilization's remarkable achievement in creating family systems that produced both effective warriors and sophisticated cultural guardians, while maintaining social stability across centuries of dramatic historical change. The day's end approaches, bringing final mysteries that complete the cycle of samurai existence. Night's embrace, preparation for death. As family obligations draw to their close and the last traces of daylight surrender to the approaching darkness, the samurai enters the most sacred and mysterious period of his entire day. What unfolds during these precious evening hours reveals the profound psychological truth that distinguish samurai from every other warrior culture in human history. Their extraordinary ability to live each day as if it were their last, not through morbid obsession with mortality, but through spiritual practices so sophisticated that they transformed the universal human fear of death into a source of strength, clarity, and transcendent peace. The evening rituals that begin this nightly preparation for death would seem strange, even disturbing, to modern observers accustomed to ending each day with entertainment, relaxation, and the comfortable assumption that tomorrow will surely arrive. Yet for the samurai, these twilight ceremonies represent the culmination of everything that made their existence meaningful. The daily opportunity to face mortality with complete acceptance, to examine one's actions with perfect honesty, and to prepare the spirit for whatever fate the coming darkness might bring. But here lies the deepest mystery of samurai psychology. How did these warriors achieve such complete acceptance of death that they could approach each evening not with anxiety or dread, but with tranquil anticipation of spiritual communion with forces greater than individual existence? The answer reveals philosophical achievements that rival anything produced by history's greatest thinkers. Practical wisdom that enabled ordinary human beings to transcend the basic fears that torment most people throughout their lives. The physical preparation for evening meditation begins with the care and cleaning of weapons that served not merely as tools of war, but as spiritual implements connecting the samurai to his deepest identity as a warrior dedicated to principles higher than personal survival. The katana and wakizashi, worn throughout the day as symbols of status and instruments of potential service, now receive attention that transforms mundane maintenance into profound spiritual practice. The ritual cleaning of the katana follows protocols passed down through generations of warriors who understood that the sword represented far more than metal and craftsmanship. Each step in the maintenance process, the careful removal of the blade from its scabbard, the gentle cleansing with specially prepared papers and oils, the meticulous inspection for any signs of damage or wear, becomes meditation on the weapon's dual nature as both life-taking instrument and guardian of honor. The application of choji oil, made from cloves and other aromatic substances, protects the blade from rust while filling the air with fragrances that connect the samurai to memories of training, ceremony, and the countless predecessors who performed these same rituals. The careful folding and storage of cleaning materials, the precise replacement of the blade in its scabbard, and the respectful positioning of both swords for the night ahead complete ceremonies that honor the implements upon which samurai identity ultimately rests. Seasonal variations in weapon care reflect changing environmental conditions that affect metal preservation while providing opportunities for deeper spiritual reflection. Summer maintenance requires extra attention to humidity and temperature changes that threaten blade integrity. The additional time and care demanded by challenging conditions create extended meditation periods that deepen the spiritual significance of weapon maintenance while ensuring continued readiness for potential service. Winter weapon care addresses different challenges as cold temperatures and reduced humidity create their own preservation requirements. The warming of oil and careful attention to metal expansion and contraction become technical necessities that provide opportunities for contemplating the complex relationships between human intention, material conditions, and spiritual preparation that define samurai existence. The preparation of sleeping quarters follows equally elaborate protocols that transform the bedroom into a sacred space suitable for the nightly practice of accepting death. The arrangement of bedding, the positioning of personal items, and the creation of proper environments for meditation and rest require attention to details that reflect deep understanding of psychology, spirituality, and the delicate balance between comfort and discipline essential for meaningful spiritual practice. The samurai sleeping area, typically a simple room with tatami flooring and minimal furnishings, becomes transformed each evening into a meditation hall where the warrior confronts fundamental questions about existence, duty, and the meaning of life itself. The careful arrangement of meditation cushions, the positioning of personal Buddhist items, and the creation of appropriate lighting conditions prepare physical space for spiritual practices that distinguish samurai evening routines from mere rest periods. But the true mystery of samurai evening preparation involves the psychological techniques developed for achieving complete acceptance of mortality. Practices so sophisticated that they enabled warriors to approach potential death with equanimity that astonished even their enemies. These techniques, refined over centuries of warrior culture, represent practical applications of Buddhist philosophy that transformed abstract spiritual teachings into concrete methods for overcoming the fear that paralyzes most human beings when confronting their own finite nature. The evening meditation session, typically lasting 1 to 2 hours, begins with breathing exercises designed to calm the mind and prepare consciousness for deep introspection. The regulation of breath, fundamental to all Buddhist practice, serves particular purposes for warriors who must maintain mental clarity and emotional equilibrium under the extreme stress of potential combat situations. Each controlled inhalation and exhalation becomes practice for the moment when breath might cease forever. The contemplation of death, known as Maranasati in Buddhist tradition, occupies the central position in samurai evening spiritual practice. This isn't morbid fascination with dying, but systematic examination of mortality as the fundamental condition that gives meaning and urgency to every moment of existence. By deeply accepting the reality of death, samurai achieve liberation from the attachments and fears that prevent complete dedication to duty and honor. Seasonal themes in death meditation reflect natural cycles that provide metaphors for understanding human mortality within larger cosmic patterns. Spring meditations contemplate death as necessary for renewal. The falling cherry blossoms that symbolize beautiful but transient existence. Summer practices focus on death as release from suffering and limitation that enables spiritual liberation from earthly attachments. Autumn meditations embrace death as natural completion of life cycles that enables harvesting of spiritual achievements while preparing for transition to whatever lies beyond individual existence. Winter contemplations examine death as rest and restoration that precedes eventual rebirth in forms determined by accumulated karma and spiritual development achieved during current existence. The practice of composing death poems, Jisei no Ku, provide another dimension of evening spiritual preparation that combines literary accomplishment with psychological readiness for mortality. These verses, traditionally written by samurai before battle or ritual suicide, represent concentrated expression of spiritual understanding, personal values, and aesthetic achievement that survives physical dissolution. The composition of practice death poems during evening meditation enables samurai to articulate their deepest convictions while developing comfort with mortality that removes fear from final moments should death actually arrive. The literary challenge of expressing profound truths within the constraints of traditional poetic forms creates mental discipline that parallels physical training while producing cultural achievements that benefit future generations. Regional variations in death preparation practices reflect local Buddhist traditions, domain customs, and historical influences that create distinctive spiritual cultures within national samurai identity. Zen-influenced regions emphasize direct meditation and immediate spiritual experience. Pure Land areas focus on devotional practices and reliance on Amitabha Buddha's saving power. Nichiren domains stress textual study and religious activism that connects spiritual practice to social engagement. The economic factors affecting evening spiritual practices create different experiences for various ranks within samurai society while maintaining essential elements that preserve warrior identity across class boundaries. Wealthy samurai maintain elaborate personal altars, expensive incense, and rare Buddhist texts that enhance spiritual practice while demonstrating cultural sophistication. Lower-ranking warriors rely on simpler materials and basic techniques while preserving fundamental spiritual disciplines that connect them to warrior traditions. The psychological benefits of nightly death preparation extend far beyond spiritual development to practical advantages that enhanced samurai effectiveness in administrative and military roles. The daily practice of accepting mortality eliminates many fears and anxieties that paralyze less prepared individuals when facing difficult decisions or dangerous situations. The mental clarity achieved through death meditation enables better judgment and more decisive action in challenging circumstances. The family impact of samurai death preparation practices creates household atmospheres that balance acceptance of mortality with appreciation for life's precious opportunities. Children learn to approach death naturally rather than with terror, while developing psychological resilience that serves them throughout their lives. Wives develop their own spiritual practices that complement their husband's preparation while maintaining family stability and emotional support. As the evening's spiritual preparation nears completion and the samurai prepares for sleep that might transition into actual death, he has achieved psychological state that enables complete peace regardless of what tomorrow might bring. The weapons are clean and ready. The spirit is prepared and accepting. The mind is clear and focused. Whether he awakens to serve another day or passes directly into whatever lies beyond individual existence, he has fulfilled his duty to live with honor and die with dignity. The arrangement of personal items for potential discovery after death, important documents properly organized, final instructions clearly written, family obligations adequately addressed, completes practical preparation while demonstrating continued responsibility for others' welfare, even beyond personal existence. Sleep comes easily to minds freed from attachment and fear. Bodies properly maintained and prepared, spirits aligned with cosmic principles that transcend individual survival. The samurai rests not in comfortable denial of mortality, but in profound acceptance that transforms death from terrifying unknown into natural transition that every conscious being must eventually navigate. Morning may bring renewed service and continued spiritual development, or it may never arrive at all. Either outcome is equally acceptable to warriors who have achieved the ultimate victory. Complete freedom from the fear that prevents most human beings from living fully in each precious moment. As darkness completes its embrace and the samurai enters sleep that rehearses the ultimate sleep awaiting all mortal beings, the cycle of daily practice reaches its completion while preparing for tomorrow's renewal, or tomorrow's final transition into the mystery that lies beyond individual existence. Seasonal variations, living with nature's rhythm. As the samurai settles into sleep that may herald eternal rest or tomorrow's renewal, a vast and mysterious cycle encompasses his existence that dwarfs even the profound daily rituals we have witnessed. For beyond the morning meditations, afternoon cultural pursuits, and evening preparations for death lies an even grander pattern that governed every aspect of samurai life with the inexorable power of cosmic law itself. The eternal dance of seasons that transformed these warriors not once each day, but 4 times each year, creating entirely different modes of existence that reveal the full complexity of living in harmony with nature's deepest rhythms. The mystery that emerges from studying seasonal variations in samurai life challenges everything we think we know about consistency, routine, and cultural stability. How could a civilization built upon rigid protocols and unchanging traditions simultaneously embrace such radical transformation that a samurai's spring existence bore little resemblance to his winter reality? The answer unveils one of history's most sophisticated examples of adaptive culture, a society so perfectly attuned to natural cycles that it achieves stability through constant change, strength through flexibility, and wisdom through surrender to forces greater than human control. Spring's arrival transforms the samurai world with the sudden violence of cherry blossoms exploding into bloom. Yet this transformation follows patterns so ancient and precise that every warrior knows exactly how his life will change as winter's grip loosens and the year's great renewal begins. The daily routines we have observed, the dawn meditation, the careful dressing, the elaborate meals, all shift according to protocols that connect individual existence to cosmic forces governing all life on Earth. The spring awakening begins before the first plum blossoms appear, as subtle changes in daylight duration and air temperature trigger responses embedded so deeply in samurai consciousness that they seem almost instinctual. Morning meditation sessions gradually lengthen as sunrise arrives earlier each day, creating additional time for spiritual preparation that acknowledges the increasing life force stirring throughout the natural world. The topics of contemplation shift from winter's introspective themes to renewal, growth, and the responsibilities that accompany each year's fresh beginning. Clothing transformations during spring koromogi represent far more than practical adaptation to warming weather. The careful exchange of heavy winter silks for lighter spring fabrics becomes ceremony that connects samurai to agricultural cycles governing their entire civilization. Each garment removed represents winter hardships overcome. Each new piece donned symbolizes readiness for challenges ahead. The colors gradually brighten from winter's subdued tones to spring's celebration of awakening life. Subtle greens, delicate pinks, soft yellows that mirror the landscape's transformation. Spring military activities resume with intensity impossible during winter's harsh months, as samurai across Japan engage in training exercises, weapon maintenance, and strategic planning that prepare for potential campaigns during the traditional fighting season. Castle defenses receive comprehensive inspection and repair after winter damage. Weapons that remained carefully stored during cold months emerge for systematic cleaning, sharpening, and testing that ensures continued readiness for service. The cultural flowering of spring creates opportunities for aesthetic pursuits impossible during winter's constraints. Cherry blossom viewing parties, known as hanami, provide occasions for poetry composition, artistic expression, and social interaction that strengthen bonds between samurai families while celebrating natural beauty. These gatherings aren't mere entertainment, but spiritual practices that cultivate appreciation for impermanence. The Buddhist truth that all existence, like cherry blossoms, achieves perfect beauty only through accepting inevitable dissolution. Summer's arrival brings transformations so dramatic that they create entirely different daily schedules, dietary requirements, and spiritual practices adapted to Japan's challenging subtropical climate. The oppressive heat and humidity that characterize Japanese summers demand radical adjustments in everything from clothing and food to work schedules and meditation techniques that maintain health and effectiveness during the year's most physically demanding period. Morning routines shift to accommodate summer's extreme conditions as samurai rise even earlier to complete essential activities before heat becomes overwhelming. Pre-dawn meditation sessions extend to take advantage of cool morning air while developing spiritual practices that provide psychological refuge from physical discomfort. The purification rituals that begin each day take on additional significance as frequent washing becomes necessary for both hygiene and spiritual cleansing in challenging conditions. Summer clothing represents some of humanity's most sophisticated adaptations to difficult climate conditions, as samurai develop techniques for maintaining dignity and effectiveness while addressing heat that can reach lethal intensity. Lightweight silk fabrics, carefully chosen colors that reflect rather than absorb solar radiation, and innovative undergarments that provide cooling while preserving propriety demonstrate the technological sophistication underlying traditional Japanese culture. The summer diet adapts to provide nutrition while addressing heat stress through foods and preparation methods that cool the body while maintaining energy levels essential for continued activity. Cold noodle dishes, chilled tofu preparations, and fresh vegetables replace the warming foods of winter, while meal timing shifts to avoid the day's hottest hours. Special summer beverages and cooling treats provide relief while observing cultural protocols that distinguish samurai from common society. Administrative activities during summer months focus on infrastructure maintenance, tax collection, and governance responsibilities that benefit from favorable weather conditions while addressing the increased social tensions that accompany physical discomfort. Judicial proceedings often intensify as heat-related conflicts require resolution, while public works projects demand careful scheduling to protect workers from dangerous conditions. Autumn's transformation brings perhaps the most psychologically complex seasonal change as samurai culture embraces themes of impermanence, harvest, and preparation for winter's challenges. The season's bittersweet beauty, stunning foliage that signals approaching dormancy, provides perfect metaphors for Buddhist teachings about the transient nature of all existence, while creating opportunities for aesthetic experiences of extraordinary power and meaning. Harvest supervision becomes a central responsibility for samurai administrators as rice collection determines not only domain prosperity, but the survival of entire populations through winter months. The careful assessment of crop yields, organization of collection activities, and distribution of grain require administrative skills, while connecting warriors to agricultural foundations of their civilization. These activities demonstrate samurai responsibility for protecting and sustaining the common people whose labor supports the entire social structure. Autumn cultural activities reach extraordinary heights of sophistication as cooling weather enables extended aesthetic pursuits impossible during summer's oppressive heat. Moon viewing ceremonies, poetry competitions celebrating seasonal themes, and art exhibitions featuring autumn motifs create cultural seasons that rival any achievements in world history. The preparation for winter isolation motivates intensive cultural activity, while favorable conditions still permit elaborate gatherings and complex artistic projects. Winter's arrival creates the year's most dramatic transformation as samurai life turns inward toward contemplation, study, and spiritual development that compensate for reduced outdoor activities. The season's harsh conditions, particularly in northern domains, demand careful resource management and psychological resilience, while providing opportunities for intellectual and cultural achievements impossible during more active periods. Winter daily schedules compress into abbreviated daylight hours that require efficient organization of essential activities while maximizing time for indoor pursuits. Morning rituals adapt to frigid conditions through techniques that maintain spiritual discipline while addressing practical challenges like frozen water, inadequate heating, and clothing requirements that complicate basic activities. Educational activities intensify during winter months as reduced outdoor obligations provide time for extensive reading, calligraphy practice, and scholarly pursuits that develop intellectual capabilities essential for administrative effectiveness. Many samurai produce their finest literary works during winter isolation when extended concentration becomes possible without interruption from social obligations or administrative duties. Regional variations in seasonal observance create dramatically different experiences for samurai serving in Japan's diverse climate zones, from subtropical southern islands to harsh northern domains where winter conditions rival those of Siberia. Northern samurai develop survival techniques and cultural adaptations that enable not merely endurance, but continued refinement during months-long periods of extreme cold and isolation. Southern domains experience different seasonal patterns that create their own challenges and opportunities, as typhoon seasons, extended growing periods, and maritime influences shape annual cycles distinct from mainland Japanese patterns. These regional differences create diverse samurai subcultures while maintaining essential cultural unity through shared values and common observances. The economic impact of seasonal variations affects different samurai ranks in dramatically different ways, as wealthy daimyo can afford elaborate seasonal modifications, while lower-ranking warriors must adapt to natural changes with minimal resources. These economic factors create different seasonal experiences within the same cultural framework, demonstrating how social class intersects with natural cycles to create diverse human experiences within unified cultural systems. Seasonal ceremonies and festivals provide community-wide observances that connect individual samurai families to larger social groups while maintaining cultural traditions that span centuries of historical development. New Year's celebrations, spring planting festivals, summer purification ceremonies, autumn harvest observances, and winter solstice rituals create annual cycles of shared experience that strengthen social bonds while preserving cultural continuity across generational boundaries. The psychological impact of seasonal change on samurai consciousness creates different mental states and spiritual focuses that acknowledge human dependence on natural forces beyond individual control. Spring optimism, summer endurance, autumn melancholy, and winter introspection represent emotional cycles that samurai culture recognized, accepted, and incorporated into comprehensive approaches to human development that balanced individual needs with social responsibilities. As we witness these vast, seasonal transformations that governed samurai existence across centuries of cultural development, we begin to understand how these extraordinary warriors achieved such remarkable adaptability while maintaining cultural coherence. Their lives represented not static tradition, but dynamic responsiveness to natural rhythms that connected human society to cosmic principles governing all existence. The mystery of seasonal variation thus reveals itself as fundamental wisdom about living in harmony with forces greater than individual will, knowledge that enabled samurai culture to survive and flourish through centuries of dramatic historical change while maintaining essential characteristics that define their unique contribution to human civilization. The Great Transformation, evolution across centuries. Just as the samurai learned to flow with nature's eternal seasonal rhythms, adapting their daily existence to spring's renewal, summer's intensity, autumn's reflection, and winter's introspection, so too did they navigate an even grander cycle that spanned not months but centuries, the vast historical transformations that would ultimately reshape their entire civilization. Yet here lies perhaps the greatest mystery of all. How did a warrior class originally defined by mounted archery and battlefield prowess evolve into sophisticated urban administrators while maintaining their essential identity? The answer reveals one of history's most remarkable examples of cultural adaptation, a transformation so complete yet so gradual that it challenges our understanding of continuity, change, and the malleable nature of human identity itself. The magnitude of this transformation becomes clear when we compare the daily life of a Heian period samurai in the year 1000 with his Edo period descendant in 1700. 7 centuries separate these warriors, yet they might as well inhabit different planets. The early samurai awakens in a crude wooden fortress on the eastern frontier, spends his morning caring for war horses and practicing mounted archery, governs through personal relationships and armed intimidation, and faces regular threats of violent death in battles that could erupt without warning. His descendant 8 centuries later rises in an elegant urban residence, devotes his morning to calligraphy and administrative paperwork, governs through complex bureaucratic procedures, and confronts his greatest dangers from financial debt and social disgrace. Yet both men call themselves samurai. Both carry the same symbolic swords. Both claim descent from the same warrior ancestors, and both organize their daily lives around concepts of honor, duty, and service that transcend individual existence. How is such continuity possible across such dramatic change? The answer reveals the genius of Japanese cultural adaptation, the ability to preserve essential spiritual and social principles while completely transforming their practical expression to meet new historical circumstances. The earliest samurai of the Heian period lived lives that more closely resembled medieval European knights than the refined administrators they would become. These frontier warriors, serving as hired muscle for wealthy landowners competing for political dominance, spent their days managing horses, maintaining weapons, training for combat, and engaging in the violent conflicts that gradually extended imperial control over Japan's remote provinces. Their morning routines centered on practical military necessities, feeding and grooming horses that represented both transportation and combat advantages, practicing mounted archery techniques that determined survival in battle, and maintaining armor and weapons that required constant attention in humid Japanese conditions. The social relationships governing early samurai daily life reflected personal bonds between individual warriors and their lords, relationships based on mutual advantage rather than abstract principles. Loyalty could shift pragmatically as political circumstances changed, and social status remained fluid as successful warriors accumulated wealth and followers while unsuccessful ones faced poverty and obscurity. The elaborate protocols and rigid hierarchies that would later define samurai society had not yet crystallized into the complex systems that governed their descendants' every gesture. The Kamakura period transformation began the long evolution toward institutionalized warrior rule as Minamoto no Yoritomo established the first military government in 1185. Suddenly, samurai found themselves not merely private warriors, but members of a ruling class responsible for governing entire regions according to legal principles and administrative procedures. Daily life began incorporating bureaucratic duties alongside martial training as warriors learned to manage tax collection, judicial proceedings, and infrastructure maintenance that supported stable governance. The establishment of formal administrative boards, the Mandakuro for financial affairs, Samurai Dakuro for military administration, and Manchujo for judicial proceedings, created new career paths and daily responsibilities that had never existed during the anarchic Heian period. Young samurai now needed education in reading, writing, legal procedures, and administrative techniques that complemented but increasingly overshadowed traditional martial skills. The morning routines that once focused entirely on military preparation began incorporating scholarly activities and cultural pursuits that prepared warriors for governmental responsibilities. Zen Buddhism's introduction during this period provided philosophical framework for managing the psychological tensions between martial identity and administrative reality. The new spiritual practices emphasized mental discipline, acceptance of change, and focus on present duties rather than attachment to past traditions or future outcomes. Morning meditation sessions became standard elements of samurai daily routines as warriors sought spiritual techniques for maintaining equilibrium during rapid social transformation. The Muromachi period accelerated cultural sophistication as prolonged contact with Chinese civilization introduced artistic traditions, educational systems, and aesthetic philosophies that transformed samurai from crude frontier fighters into cultivated gentlemen capable of competing with imperial court nobles in cultural accomplishments. Daily schedules began incorporating tea ceremony practice, poetry composition, and artistic pursuits that eventually became as important as military training for social success and personal fulfillment. The increasing complexity of government administration during this period required samurai to develop skills in diplomacy, finance, law, and cultural protocol that went far beyond anything their ancestors had imagined. The daily life of a successful Muromachi samurai resembled that of a Renaissance courtier more than a medieval warrior. Yet the fiction of martial identity was carefully maintained through ceremonial practices and symbolic gestures that preserved essential warrior characteristics within radically transformed daily routines. The Sengoku period temporarily reversed this trend toward cultural refinement as Japan erupted into civil wars that lasted over a century. Samurai daily life returned to military necessities as survival depended once again on combat effectiveness rather than administrative competence. Yet even during this violent period, the cultural achievements of previous centuries were not abandoned, but rather adapted to serve military purposes. Poetry and calligraphy became tools for diplomatic communication. Tea ceremony provided neutral ground for political negotiations. Artistic patronage demonstrated wealth and stability that attracted allies and intimidated enemies. The technological innovations of this period, particularly the introduction of firearms, created new training requirements and tactical considerations that further complicated samurai daily routines. Morning practice sessions now included matchlock drill alongside traditional archery and swordsmanship. Equipment maintenance expanded to encompass gunpowder storage, firing mechanism care, and ammunition production that required technical knowledge unknown to previous generations. The Azuchi Momoyama period under Oda Nobunaga and Toyotomi Hideyoshi initiated the final phase of transformation through military and social policies that separated samurai from farming, concentrated them in castle towns, and began converting them into professional administrators and cultural specialists. Hideyoshi's sword hunts and class separation edicts created the social framework that would ultimately produce the completely non-military samurai of the Edo period. The daily life changes during this period were dramatic and traumatic as samurai families abandoned rural estates for urban residences, gave up direct control over agricultural production for stipend payments and rice, and accepted positions within hierarchical bureaucracies that offered security in exchange for independence. Morning routines adapted to urban conditions and administrative schedules while maintaining traditional elements through increasingly formalized and ceremonial practices. The Edo period transformation represents perhaps history's most complete conversion of a warrior class into civilian administrators while maintaining the cultural fiction of martial identity. The daily life we have observed throughout this exploration. The elaborate morning rituals, sophisticated cultural pursuits, and complex administrative duties represents the culmination of centuries of gradual adaptation that preserved essential samurai characteristics within completely transformed social roles. The psychological challenges facing Edo period samurai were unprecedented, as men trained from childhood to identify as warriors lived entire lives without experiencing combat. Daily routines required constant balancing between maintaining martial traditions through ceremonial practice and developing civilian skills essential for administrative effectiveness. The morning sword practice that began each day served psychological rather than practical purposes, preserving warrior identity within lives devoted to paperwork, cultural refinement, and bureaucratic responsibilities. Economic pressures intensified during the peaceful Edo period as fixed rice stipends failed to keep pace with monetary inflation and commercial development. Many samurai daily routines incorporated income-generating activities that technically violated class restrictions but became necessary for maintaining appropriate lifestyle standards. Teaching, crafts production, and various commercial enterprises supplemented official stipends while creating identity conflicts between warrior status and practical necessity. Regional variations in adaptation reflected different domain policies and economic conditions that created diverse samurai experiences within national unity. Progressive domains encouraged education and cultural development that prepared samurai for modern challenges. Conservative regions maintained traditional practices that preserved warrior identity but hindered adaptation to changing circumstances. These variations would prove crucial during the final transformation of the Meiji Restoration. The cultural achievements of Edo period samurai represented compensation for lost military function through extraordinary artistic and intellectual accomplishments that elevated Japanese civilization to unprecedented heights. The daily cultural pursuits we have observed, tea ceremony, poetry, calligraphy, flower arrangement, reached levels of sophistication that influenced aesthetic development throughout East Asia while providing psychological outlets for warrior energy channeled away from combat into creative expression. As the Edo period drew toward its close and foreign pressure mounted for Japan to abandon isolation, samurai daily life faced its ultimate test. Could centuries of cultural adaptation enable successful transition to modern civilization, or would the loss of traditional roles destroy the class entirely? The answer would emerge through the final transformation that began with Perry's black ships and culminated in the Meiji Restoration that abolished the samurai class while preserving its essential contributions to Japanese civilization. The great mystery of samurai evolution thus reveals itself as triumph of adaptive wisdom over rigid tradition, proof that cultural identity can survive complete transformation of daily practices when essential values remain intact and social conditions demand creative response to new challenges. The legacy of disciplined existence. As we reach the end of our journey through the hidden world of samurai daily life, following these extraordinary warriors from their pre-dawn meditations through their evening preparations for death, witnessing their adaptation across seasons and centuries, we are left with profound questions that transcend historical curiosity and touch the deepest mysteries of human existence itself. What can we learn from a civilization that transformed mounted archers into calligraphy masters, battlefield veterans into tea ceremony practitioners, and crude frontier fighters into guardians of aesthetic refinement so sophisticated that it influences global culture to this day? The answer emerges not from any single aspect of samurai life, but from the totality of their extraordinary experiment in conscious living, an approach to human existence so comprehensive, so disciplined, and so spiritually sophisticated that it created individuals capable of finding profound meaning in the simplest daily activities while maintaining readiness for ultimate sacrifice and service to principles greater than personal survival. The mystery of samurai civilization reveals itself as nothing less than a complete system for human development that balanced individual perfection with social responsibility, warrior strength with cultural refinement, acceptance of mortality with celebration of life's transient beauty. The daily routines we have witnessed, those elaborate morning rituals, carefully structured meals, intensive cultural pursuits, complex family obligations, and profound evening preparations for death, were never mere customs or traditional practices. They represented practical applications of philosophical insights about human nature, social organization, and spiritual development that rival anything produced by history's greatest thinkers. Every gesture carried meaning. Every moment demanded attention. Every breath taken was simultaneously an act of service and a step toward enlightenment. Consider the profound wisdom embedded in beginning each day with meditation on mortality. By facing death before breakfast, samurai achieved psychological freedom from the fears and attachments that prevent most people from living fully in each precious moment. This daily confrontation with finitude didn't create morbid obsession, but rather liberated warriors to approach their responsibilities with clarity, courage, and complete dedication impossible for those who live in comfortable denial of life's temporary nature. The elaborate clothing rituals that transformed ordinary men into embodiments of centuries-old ideals demonstrate sophisticated understanding of how external forms shape internal consciousness. The careful selection of appropriate fabrics, colors, and accessories wasn't vanity or empty ceremony, but psychological technology that connected individual identity to cultural values, seasonal rhythms, and social responsibilities that transcended personal preference. By dressing according to ancient protocols, samurai daily renewed their commitment to principles inherited from countless predecessors while preparing to transmit these same ideals to future generations. The complex food culture that governed every meal reveals extraordinary integration of nutrition, spirituality, and aesthetic appreciation that transform basic biological necessity into opportunities for cultural refinement and philosophical contemplation. The careful attention to seasonal ingredients, preparation methods, and presentation techniques created daily practices that connected samurai to agricultural cycles, natural beauty, and Buddhist teachings about interdependence, while providing practical training in attention, gratitude, and present moment awareness. The administrative duties that consumed most samurai daylight hours demonstrate how warrior virtues, courage, loyalty, discipline, honor, could be successfully channeled into civilian purposes without losing their essential character. The careful governance of domains, maintenance of justice, and provision for common welfare required moral courage equal to any battlefield achievement, while developing intellectual capabilities and cultural sophistication that enhanced rather than diminished warrior identity. The afternoon cultural pursuits that occupied samurai during their most creative periods reveal perhaps their greatest achievement: the successful integration of aesthetic refinement with martial readiness, demonstrating that true strength requires not merely the power to destroy, but the wisdom to create and preserve what makes existence meaningful. Tea ceremony, poetry composition, calligraphy practice, and flower arrangement weren't escapes from warrior duty, but essential components of warrior development that prepared samurai for the ultimate tests of character and spiritual understanding. The family and community obligations that structured samurai evening hours show how individual perfection could be balanced with social responsibility through sophisticated systems that maintained hierarchical order while preserving human warmth, cultural transmission, and mutual support essential for social stability across generations of dramatic historical change. The evening preparations for death that concluded each day represent perhaps the highest achievement of samurai psychological development. Complete acceptance of mortality that enabled perfect peace regardless of external circumstances. By ending each day ready to die with honor, samurai achieved spiritual victory over the fundamental anxiety that torments most human beings throughout their lives. The seasonal variations that transformed samurai existence 4 times yearly demonstrate profound wisdom about living in harmony with natural rhythms while adapting human activities to cosmic forces beyond individual control. This flexibility within structure, change within continuity, enabled samurai culture to survive and flourish through centuries of dramatic transformation while maintaining essential characteristics that define their unique contribution to human civilization. The Great Transformation across 8 centuries of history reveals the ultimate proof of samurai adaptability: the ability to preserve essential spiritual and cultural values while completely transforming their practical expression to meet new circumstances. From mounted archers to urban bureaucrats, from battlefield veterans to cultural guardians, samurai maintain their identity through focusing on principles rather than practices, values rather than mere customs. Yet perhaps the most profound mystery of all is how this extraordinary civilization prepared its members for their own eventual dissolution. The Meiji Restoration that abolished the samurai class in 1871 was achieved with remarkable peace precisely because centuries of cultural adaptation had prepared these warriors for ultimate transformation. The discipline, education, administrative competence, and spiritual development that defined samurai daily life provided exactly the skills needed for successful transition to modern professional and governmental roles. Former samurai became teachers, government officials, business leaders, and cultural innovators who guided Japan's modernization while preserving essential characteristics of their cultural heritage. The morning meditation that once prepared warriors for battle became discipline that enabled lifelong learning. The cultural refinement that distinguished samurai from common society became aesthetic sensibility that influenced modern Japanese design, craftsmanship, and artistic achievement. The administrative competence developed through domain governance became governmental and business skills that supported industrial development. The samurai legacy thus transcends historical curiosity to offer practical wisdom for contemporary challenges. In our modern world of constant change, technological disruption, and social fragmentation, the samurai example demonstrates how human beings can create meaningful lives through disciplined daily practices that connect individual development to larger purposes while maintaining adaptability essential for survival in uncertain circumstances. The morning rituals that began each samurai day offer models for contemporary spiritual practice that balances action with contemplation, individual needs with social responsibility. The attention to seasonal cycles provides framework for living in harmony with natural rhythms while adapting to changing circumstances. The integration of aesthetic pursuits with practical duties demonstrates how cultural refinement can enhance rather than hinder professional effectiveness. The samurai approach to mortality offers particularly valuable insights for contemporary society, increasingly uncomfortable with aging, death, and the finite nature of human existence. By accepting mortality as the fundamental condition that gives meaning and urgency to every moment, we can achieve psychological freedom from attachments and fears that prevent complete engagement with life's opportunities and responsibilities. The samurai experiment in conscious living reveals that ordinary human beings can achieve extraordinary things through disciplined attention to daily practices that gradually transform consciousness while developing capabilities that seemed impossible at the beginning of the journey. The cumulative effect of thousands of small, perfect actions creates individuals capable of great achievements while maintaining humility, service orientation, and spiritual depth that benefits entire communities. As we conclude our exploration of this hidden world behind the sword, we are left not with nostalgic longing for a vanished past, but with practical wisdom for creating meaningful present existence. The samurai demonstrate that human life can be elevated to the level of art through conscious attention to daily routines, seasonal rhythms, and spiritual practices that connect individual existence to cosmic principles governing all life. Their legacy reminds us that true strength comes not from external power, but from internal discipline. That genuine security emerges not from controlling circumstances, but from developing the capacity to respond wisely to whatever challenges arise, And that lasting happiness depends not on satisfying desires, but on finding meaning through service to principles greater than personal survival. The mystery of samurai daily life thus reveals itself as timeless wisdom about human potential, cultural adaptation, and the possibility of creating civilizations that honor both individual development and collective welfare while maintaining harmony with natural forces that sustain all existence. In our own daily choices about how to live with meaning, purpose, and dignity, the samurai example continues to offer guidance for the eternal human quest to transform ordinary existence into something extraordinary through disciplined devotion to ideals that transcend the boundaries of individual life and death.